Oh, hold on. I'm out of breath here. Oh, God. Hello once again. Welcome back to Enter the Nerdom. I'm here with
Stan Morancini,
Watson Bradshaw,
and I'm Chad Cook, and we have here our special guest this episode, Tim Bannock.
Hi.
Say hi.
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 but why do you have a gun to his head when you say
Sorry, I
say hi?
Yes.
Tell them you're safe, Tim.
I'm still safe.
I mean, there's a safe word you'll hear throughout the episode, guys.
Yeah. If it's dragons,
click,
I'm
click.
Tweet.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Tell them you're safe.
Yeah.
Click, click.
Enter stock reloading of a gun.
Yes.
Oh,
good sound effects.
Thank
Right,
you.
right,
Yeah, right?
Yeah,
It's homemade, yes.
Yeah. But Tim, we brought you on because you are our aficionado, I guess, or maestro of everything D&D.
I like Maestro. Yeah.
Maestro?
Resident
Good.
Maestro.
Game Maestro.
Yeah.
Dungeon Maestro? Yeah, there you go.
The Dice Meister.
Oh, that's a nice one too. And we kind of want to get into it, all things D&D, and then also other nerd things, because we are the Nerdom, and we're not just one thing. We're many. We are many.
So I think that's a different.
What do you
that's
mean?
a different group's.
What are you trying to say?
I'm just saying.
Join us.
Yeah.
We're talking about the Demon Legion.
Oh wow.
So Tim, drink this Kool-Aid. You'll be fine.
Yeah, you'll be fine. One of us.
Just wear the robe and
Oh, I forgot my robe, guys. Damn it.
Right?
Again.
What kind of
Again.
cult is this?
my robe's in the wash.
Before we get too off the rails,
Already too late.
Yeah,
Already
I know.
2 seconds in.
Wow.
Tim is another member, current member. Another current member of our comic book Reading Rainbows group that we wanted to bring on the show, and we're glad to have you here.
Thank you. Yeah, it's good to be here. I'm very excited to talk about a lot of nerdy things. I think D&D is one of the nerdiest things. So
Yeah.
It's
we're
up
on the right
there.
track.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what got you first, or I guess when did you first get into Dungeons and Dragons?
How did you enter the nerdom of
Yes.
D&D?
Right. Well, yeah, let's start from the beginning.
Was there a drawbridge?
Right. Yeah.
When did you
In a
drop the
castle.
first die?
So I did the, I think they call it it's sort of like the official method of most people getting into D&D, at least pre-critical role and stuff like that.
Bullying?
No, you would think so. No, the bullying comes after you join. No, it was my cousin got me into it.
Oh, nice.
method.
Ah, okay.
And so that was true for me. So I had an older cousin who was about the same age as my older brother.
Mm-hmm.
They were already playing it. And so they wanted someone to absorb some trap damage, and I was 5 years old.
Cannon fodder.
Exactly.
They just sent you in.
That's literally
Just
what I was.
Leroy Jenkins it. Just go
Yep.
on.
And that's what I did. I was 5 years old at the time, so
Oh, wow.
I literally had no idea what I was doing. I saw these cool math rocks and was like, "Oh, that's awesome!"
Oh man.
And yeah, so they had me join in, and
Do you know
I
what
was hooked.
character you played at the beginning? Like,
I don't know for 100% certain, but I know an early character I came up with was Lion Man.
Lion Man.
Okay.
Oh, that's cool. Oh.
And I literally just pictured this guy who had a lion's face, and there was nothing special about him. D&D is all about the rules and mechanics. I had none of that. I knew none of that, so I just wanted a dude with a lion's face.
Hey.
Oh, I thought it was an actual D&D character.
Well, there
you
is
played.
there's a race of cat people. So.
Right.
It turns out there are, but
Oh,
that
but
came,
this
I
is something
think-
you created.
Yeah, this was
Oh,
something I
that's
created,
cool.
and
So
I think
they owe
that-
you money for that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I'll call up their lawyers soon.
That's right.
That's awesome. And so, what got you to stick around with playing it? What was it specifically about the game that interested you enough to keep doing it?
Yeah, so it was definitely the collaborative aspect of having fun because it was different from video games, which when I was 5, video games were actually fairly new. So I'm dating myself a little bit. But like the Atari was out, NAS had just come out. And so like I knew of those things and I liked them, and I knew of board games and I liked them. But the collaborative aspect of Dungeons & Dragons is what changed everything for me and hooked me, from then on. And I loved it from that first moment and never stopped loving it.
Right
even
on,
to
right.
today. So many people like, oh, I took 10 years off after college or something. Didn't play role-playing games for a long time. I never took time off.
Oh, wow.
I've been playing in games, since then.
Nice.
And it was that collaboration. I think it's that aspect of, everyone's at the table to work as a team to create a story and a world and stuff like that. And I think that's what makes it so unique from other types of these games. Like, computer games, video games are, necessarily limited to a finite number of choices and a finite world, or worlds and stuff like that. You can buy different games, but once you have that game, you're in that game and you're playing that story. And you're making the choices limited by that. And board games are the same thing, and role-playing games don't have those same limitations. You can, there are games that have a specific focus or whatever, but you can literally sit down and with certain rule sets, there's games that are universal role-playing game systems. I'm sure we'll talk more about this stuff later on, but you can have a system that supports any genre, any types of characters. There are games as wide-ranging as, Dungeons & Dragons. You get the fantasy. There are superhero games like Marvel, which some of us have played here.
Yep.
And there are games. There was a Smallville role-playing game.
Oh, wow.
And not just like this is a Superman game. This is Smallville. So teen romance drama role-playing game with superpowers.
Nice.
And
Really?
that was a real thing.
Interesting.
And there's a My Little Pony game, and so they've touched on everything. And so you can build that. With
Do you have a
you and 4
favorite
people.
of like all the possible genres? I mean, there's obviously the fantasy world of D&D, but then there's like Star Wars, as you said, Marvel, and the like. Is there a favorite one you've?
I think D&D has always been the mainstay because I
Okay.
love fantasy. But a close second has been superhero games.
Oh, okay.
I've always been into superhero comics with
Yeah.
Marvel and DC and stuff like that.
Now,
so
since
those-
the inception of D&D, there's been 5 or 6 different versions of it. I mean, Pathfinder and the like. Is there one that sticks out to you? Do you like the newer version? Do you like? I go old school. Like, where do you stand on all that?
that's a great question, and there's a lot of history to that. So there's a lot more than 5 versions.
Yeah. What is D&D? And how do you D&D?
Do we want to get that basic?
I mean, we could. I mean, we
I
can
don't-
get really into the weeds of it and talk about the the whole origin of it and stuff. But
Well, yeah, I'll answer your question first, and then we could maybe go in that direction.
little history.
My favorite. For a while, it was the 5th edition because it's the cleanest, most modern, streamlined. And that was true for a short time, and then it got bloated, and so that actually drove me back to what's colloquially known as the BX or Basic Expert Edition, which is I think was published in about 1980.
Yeah.
And that was kind of a revision of OD&D or 0 edition because the editions are all numbered really weird, and that's why there's more than 5. I don't know why, it's all backwards numbering anyway. So, but BX is my favorite. And because it's actually cleaner and simpler than 5th edition in a lot of ways, but also has a little bit more robust tools for the DM. And if there's one thing we can probably spend a ton of time on, or may not want to though, is the quote unquote DM problem that it's hard to GM and it's hard to create a game. That's not actually true. And the BX edition of the game has these very robust and also simple streamlined tools that prove that it's not hard to do. Anybody can get in, use these tools, and be able to run a game
Nice.
within minutes.
That's
Wow.
awesome.
So you said that the 5th edition got bloated. What do you mean by that? How did it get bloated?
So part of the the necessary evil of publishing these games is you got to make money, and so you got to keep publishing stuff for them, right? And Wizards of the Coast, who's the current publisher, they're owned by Hasbro. They're incredibly smart, and they realize that players are more numerous than dungeon masters, and so it's nice to give dungeon masters some monster books and stuff like that, but it's even nicer to give players loads of options. So we talked about cat people races earlier. So Wizards of the Coast knows to just keep pumping out new races, new classes, new subclasses, which are like customization choices you can make for your class. So you know, not everyone who's a fighter is going to wield a sword and a shield. Like you might have a bow, you might have a pole arm, you might have all these things, and they have specific subclasses and feats and all these things that allow you to specialize and tweak those and become better and more focused, and they keep pumping those things out. And so bloated, I think, mostly means on the player's side, but also means on the GM side. I'll take a swing at Wizards on this one. Wizards of the Coast. I think they continue to release very poor tools for the game masters. They keep putting out stuff, good these campaigns that are pretty cool epic stories, but they're often very overwritten and very hard to run, and because they don't have the same streamlined set of tools that I mentioned that BX has, it's very difficult to get up and running with a game of any edition since then, because they're not focusing on how to make those parts of the game easier to get into.
Do you feel like they've somehow like muddied up the whole ideal of the game, like that Dykstra came up with, or Gary Dykstra, right? Was the
Gary Gygax and Dave Artisan.
Oh man,
yeah.
Come on, get off the podcast.
Yeah.
Get off the podcast.
You're out of here.
You're done.
Ah, man.
You're your nerd card, buddy.
You're done.
Do I think no, I don't think they've really kind of gone too far astray. I think they make a great game, and they're making the game for a very specific audience, and I hesitate to say it's like they're like trying to milk it for the most popular audience, because I don't think that's necessarily what it is either. I'm not sure exactly how to sum it up easily, but I think overall what it creates is they aren't looking to make the game easier to run. They're looking to make money off of the options and keep people's interest in the brand.
right?
And I think that's a very different mentality than originally what it was. Like, you don't buy a board game and buy t-shirts for it and all this stuff as a matter of course. Like, you buy the board game and you want to play the game. And I think if Wizards has lost sight of anything, it's only that they're too focused on a brand as a whole than how the game itself can be easier to run.
Right.
But they're not. It's not like they're automatically putting out bad product because of that. They're doing some great things.
Has that been since Hasbro took control, or is that prior to that?
It's a little bit of both. I think there's a couple really great books. If you want to dive into the history, which we should not get into because it's so long,
Right?
And I'll bore you to tears with that. If we want to get into the history of it, there's some really great books. There's one, I think it's called Slaying the Dragon, if I'm not mistaken. I might be off on the title a little bit, but that was very recent, and they go into the history of the business behind it, and you can see all this really cool stuff of how it started off as a game, and they're like, let's make this game as fun as possible. And then it became a business, and all of a sudden you had these people who had no idea how to run a business involved, and they're trying to make it like a successful business. And then TSR got new management, and I'm about to answer your question finally. They finally realized, okay, how can we do both things? And then Hasbro came in, and actually, I think they right off the bat with their third edition, which was right around 2000, I think that came out. They actually went back to the drawing board and did a lot of good things right off the bat. And tried to move it back into that game first mentality, and did a lot of good stuff with it. But, over the years, as it became more and more popular, and especially since streaming came along with actual play videos like Critical Role and things like that, the brand is far more important, because the brand is what makes them, 10,000 times more money than the
actual
books.
game. Yeah. Well, I was trying to explain D&D to my wife, and she's like, do you need to buy a lot? I was like, no, you need dice and your imagination.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a thing. So it's like, as a business, like, And there's so many people that do custom dice and stuff like that. There's so many ways to buy dice. It's not like like they don't have the Monopoly, another game, but they don't have it on just dice, right? So how do they make money off that? How do they make it profitable? And you're right, like they do all this little expansion stuff, and I think I could see like them trying to figure out a way of like, God, how do we make this? How do I make any money off this? I don't know, because it is literally just like, as long as you got a pen and pencil and a brain, you can kind of create whatever world you want. Yeah. And so for you, I mean, do you prefer DMing? Do you prefer playing? Like, where do you really feel at home doing what you do?
I'm what's known as the forever DM. So I'm most often DMing, and a DM
is a dungeon.
Yes, dungeon master or a game master. I actually prefer the term game moderator.
Ooh,
excuse me.
I like that.
Apologize.
I don't mean that to sound pretentious, although it does. But I think that's a better representation of what it is. I'm not the master of the game. Like I mentioned collaboration is the whole point of it. Like it's 4 or 5 people sitting at a table. Like we're all in this equally. I might have a scenario behind the thing that you don't know what's going on, but you're the ones who are going to make it fun, because otherwise to me it's just a map with some traps on it.
Right.
It's just garbage. So to make it fun, you got to be collaborative. So game moderator is much more the mentality of like, okay, you guys bring your characters to the table. I've got this adventure. I'm going to fairly adjudicate how this stuff works, and I'm going to find a way to make the pacing as fun for you guys as possible and bring you into this world as much as possible. So it's much more of that collaboration. So as you can probably tell based on that description, I love, being a DM.
Is it frustrating? I mean, do you find it frustrating, or is it exciting when are you trying to guide them to like, they got to get through this door, or is it like, oh, they're not going that way, good thing I've got like 3 alternatives to that? Or is it, like, is it just like, guys, you should really try going down that hallway? Like, I don't know, like, how do you keep the pacing of a game going? Or is it just like, all right, is it like jazz, where it's just like, we're going to see where it goes?
So that's, I think the most popular kind of misconception is that the game master as the master, and the reason why I hate that term is that you are trying to guide people. Like you've got your story. And so whenever I hear anyone use the term story, I'm going to run you through my story. Like, no, like if I read a story or I watch a story on film, those are things that are finite. Somebody else has created them, and I don't collaborate, with that vision. The whole thing that makes these games unique is the collaboration, right? So I think the best way to word it, and somebody else said this, I want to say I saw it with a guy named Justin Alexander, who said it. He may not have been the first, but he's certainly the one I know it. And it's, you don't create a story, you don't create a plot, you create a situation. And that's the best scenarios are there situations. So I'm creating, a map. It's got some treasures. It's got some monsters, and there's probably going to be problems with the monsters before you guys even bring your characters to the table. There's factions, maybe, and some of the monsters hate each other, and maybe some of the treasures are locked away, and the monsters would love to have them too. They're not just guarding them. They also want the treasure, but they can't get to it because whatever traps are in place. And so now you have a situation. You have these factions who hate each other. You have different people who may or may not ally with the players. And then you introduce the players to the situation. So they might be there for their own motives that they create. Do they want the treasure? Do they want to kill all the monsters? Do they want to carve up the monsters and turn them into hide?
We're gonna set fire to the place,
or burn it all down. Yeah, exactly. You supply the motivations. I've got the situation. But then we see how it plans out. Do you go befriend the goblins in order to murder all the kobolds, or do you try to just kill them all, or whatever? And that's the fun of it. A big thing that you'll see in some of the ways adventures are published and stuff like that is that it's a plot, and it's like you go from beat to beat and thing to thing, and you lead people along. And I just feel like that's not getting it. Like you can run the games that way, and I think there are people, and I've probably even done this myself, that can do it well under certain circumstances if everyone goes in knowing that's what they're there for. Like you're there to not just like raid this dungeon, but you're there to like go on the quest and throw the One Ring into the Mount Doom or something like that.
Sounds familiar.
That sounds stupid.
It's pretty dumb.
Hey, did you come up with that?
Can we just use eagles?
I know, right? Where were the Eagles?
Fly, you fool.
But yeah, if everyone comes to the table knowing that they're on kind of a railroad ride, it can be fun. We mentioned that we played this Marvel game, Watson and I.
Yeah, please. That was interesting. You guys were talking
Yeah.
about it before the podcast. What is it? So you were talking about how you can take the D&D model and apply it to anything, not just fantasy, right?
Right. Yeah. So in this particular case, it was a podcast called "Let's Start Over, Shall We?" And it was
Shout out to them.
shout out to the currently on hiatus podcast.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was the brainchild of Leon, who was like, let's run the MCU characters, but they make different choices. And so you take this superhero game. We used the 1980s Marvel phase rip system.
It was great, by the way. Going through those old books and like, oh my lord, like it was so much fun.
Yeah, a lot of nostalgia there.
Yeah.
But yeah, you go in, and so that one was a little bit more of a railroad in the sense that we're like, okay, you're playing this MCU character, so you have your character in a sense mapped out their personality, and some of the situations were known ahead of time because like what. Enemies are in play by that point. Like Red Skull's already defeated by the time we start this, so he's not going to just show up out of nowhere or whatever, And so there was a little bit of that, like guiding the story a little bit, but even then, it's like we worked very hard to distill it down to like, okay, we know we have to get to Iron Man 2, but what are the interesting choices before that or that lead into that? And let's make that situation.
Yeah, I mean, the beauty of it was like characters completely changed, which was so like I think by Iron Man. I mean, it might be a little spoiler for the podcast, but
it's like 3 years old.
Yeah,
now.
Pepper Potts ends up joining Shield.
Yeah,
So she's a Shield agent in the podcast.
That happened organically.
Yeah.
in the podcast.
Yeah.
That
It
wasn't
did.
like something you guys planned out.
like
Not
no,
at all.
Really?
No, just Coulson and her end up like hanging out more, and
Yeah, it was a little bit behind the scenes. The player of Pepper Potts, Callie, she was like after the events that happened in the first or second session or something like that between her and Tony Stark, she was like, well, Pepper Potts' story in the MCU has these kind of holes in it. Like she's this very
capable character,
who is not given a capable role until much later on.
Right. Very behind the scenes, yeah.
Right. And so she was like, how can I make this more apparent earlier on? And just the way her interplay was with Tony, she was like, I need to get away from Tony Stark in order to achieve
like you
that.
realize how toxic that relationship really is.
Right.
And it makes sense. Like if you watch the movies, like that was a totally valid choice for her to not take on Stark Industries. And so in this, we're like, okay, how can we do this? Let's go, swing for the bleachers. And so she decided, I'm going to join Shield and then make it this very different take on.
And then
the
like
same
her and
character.
Black Widow end up like pairing up a lot, I think. And,
Mockingbird.
Mockingbird.
We
That's
used
right,
Mockingbird because we didn't
Mockingbird.
have Black Widow cast for a while.
That's right.
What was the-
so good?
Wow.
What was the system you used? Like, was it the BX or was it like the current?
So yeah, we used this old is a 1980s TSR actually who also published D&D. They had the Marvel license back in 1980 whatever 8 something like that.
Yeah.
I don't know. And so they made a Marvel role playing game.
Oh.
No way.
And so Leon's whole pitch of this whole thing was the MCU, but using this old kind of rusty garbage system that still somehow plays fairly elegantly.
Yeah, it was really
like-
intuitive. Like once
Yeah.
you get used to the because it was it was like a red scale, green scale, like it was stuff
Yeah.
like that. I don't know, I don't remember exactly, but like once you got into it, you're like, oh, okay, I can work with this. It wasn't, you weren't rolling dice for outcomes. Well, I mean, kind of were, but
yeah, it's a lot less. I don't want to say it's less mechanics. It's a little bit more streamlined than D&D. D&D has a lot of like subsystems. This was like anytime you needed to roll for anything like with a superpower, basically you would just roll percentile dice and you'd have this color coded chart which would tell you your success level. So instead of just rolling D20,
I had that printed and laminated out.
Really?
I did. I was like, just to know.
because it tells you it's not just like pass or fail,
Yeah.
which is D&D system. It's like you pass with barely. or you pass with flying colors and stuff like that. And so you had different gradations of success and failure. And so it really kind of like put a lot on the players to be like, okay, you succeeded, but not a lot. How do you describe that? And so they get to.
And you could screw the pooch where you're like, I'm going to knock this guy out. And then you roll and then you're like, oh, I just killed this guy with one punch by accident. You know, like,
right.
It was really like, it was kind of fun to do it that way.
That's terrifying.
well, because what it did, that system, the part of the fun of the 80s system was that it kind of like took into account like some heroes are anti-heroes. So like, you know, taking into account like a Punisher or Wolverine, it was like, how do you do that? So in this system is like, if you use a lethal weapon and you roll the highest result, you do a lethal result. So like if you go in and you're like, and you're Wolverine and you're like, oh, I can't kill Magneto. I got to knock him out, you know, in order to find out where his base is or some stupid thing like that. Like you can't go in there using your claws because you're probably going to chop off his head. You know what I mean? Or whoever it is, maybe not Magneto, but yeah, like, and so the whole point of this exercise of doing this game with that system was we're like, the dice fall where they may. So if Pepper Potts gets killed in episode 1, that's how it works, and
how that reverberates through all the movies, you know, like how those choices really change the dynamic, you know, to where the point where you get to the Avengers and it could be a whole different team. You wouldn't know.
Yeah. Wow.
So you guys mentioned a system and the differences between the systems. Like, so I've only ever played D&D once prior to me playing it a couple times with some friends over Zoom, and that's it. So I probably played it maybe half a dozen times, if that. What do you mean by systems? I didn't know that there was I knew that there was different versions of D&D, but I thought there was just like, oh, they added some more strength to like the skeleton soldiers, or they took out like the problematic character that's now a problem that wasn't a problem back in the 70s. That kind of thing. Like I thought that's what it was.
The Amazon warrior.
That kind of thing. Like, so what do you mean that there's differences in each system? Like, if you could boil that down. I know it's complicated.
Well, yeah, I think this goes into like, you know, the meta conversation about what is a role-playing game, and we won't go into the craziness of it, but I think, you know, to boil it down, role-playing games have existed since 1974, I think, is when Gygax and Arneson made D&D, and there's been a non-stop DIY element in the industry before it was really even an industry, where people were tweaking it and they're like, okay, how can I do D&D but in science fiction? You have a game called Traveler that kind of does that. And so some of them were clearly just like an offshoot of D&D. D&D, you'll find D&D is actually the kind of like through line into games like Final Fantasy. The first ones of those have the exact same stats, exact same playable races and classes as in D&D. But then people tweaked them and made them for these other genres, and pretty soon they get wildly different. And so by different systems, it means different basic game mechanics. In the same way that Monopoly is, actually I haven't even played Monopoly in a long time, so I could be messing this up, but you roll a d6 and then move that many spaces.
Yeah.
Right. Wow, it's been that long. I hate Monopoly, by the way. But you know, compare that to a game like Risk or you know, Gloomhaven, which doesn't use dice.
I love Gloomhaven. It's so much fun.
Crazy.
Yeah. We got to do
I've never even heard of that.
Oh, it's my buddy is a big tabletop gamer guy.
You should do an episode of that. It'll take you about 17 years.
Yeah.
I saw that Gloomhaven's on the top of the, there's a tabletop game list, and it's number one, been there for like 4 years or 5 years.
It's fantastic. It's a lot. I mean, it's very expensive, like D&D, where you can just kind of go anywhere with it. So
but yeah, so the systems thing is all that. There's all these different games that have sprouted up over the years to handle these different ideas of genres and types of characters. And so a game like D&D, you know, fundamentally can't handle superheroes. You know, you can only have so much strength before a D20 die just can't handle, you know, the math on it, or the like the tropes of the system, you know, are the such that like the narrative of it isn't really going to work for that high level of power. So you need a different system to handle like a Superman. So, you know, DC had their own system, and so on and so forth. And like some games don't have any dice involved at all. They're completely diceless. You might have just tokens, and so it's just a matter of like bidding tokens or things like that. My cousin is a game designer, and has made several. One of them is descriptors, and it's a word game, role-playing game. And so you never use a randomizer or anything like that. You just have, I think it's 4 adjectives on your character sheet, and you can spend those adjectives to succeed. And once you run out, though, you can no longer succeed. So you have to be careful about when you spend them.
Oh, that's awesome.
And then you can go, quote unquote, fishing for new adjectives in a scene by like going and, it might be like your training montage or going shopping for weapons or something like that. And so you can see what kind of adjectives can I pick up? Oh, there's a sharp knife. So you get sharp. So now you've gained another adjective, and so now you have another chance to succeed further down the line, or something. And so, and that's just scratching the surface. There's a million different games, and now I think with D&D's resurgence in popularity, the industry as a whole, like what is that? A rising tide lifts all boats, whatever. Yeah. It just took off, and now you can go to places like itch.io. We used to be for all about indie video games. Oh. Great site if you want to see like people creating, a one-person team creating a video game that's probably going to be memorable for life. Like there's so many cool things on there, but there's this huge underground of role-playing game creators who use itch because it's a great resource for them to do so and make a few bucks off of, a role-playing game that fits on a 16-page pamphlet or something like that, as opposed to the 3 200-page, or 300-page books, that make up D&D. Like it's exactly like board games in that way, that there's just a huge gambit. They run all, prices and styles.
Do you see them upgrading from 5 soon, or it'll be longer of this throwing new characters and the like in, or? I mean, because how many years has it been now since 5 came out?
2015, I want to say, is about when it launched. So they've got the 50th anniversaries coming up next year, and they're launching a revision of the 5th edition. Okay. They are very specifically and pointedly saying it's not a new edition.
It's not 6.
Okay. Yeah, it's not a new one. But it is very clearly a heavy revision in the sense that they're going back to the fundamentals of, like, say, each class and being like, okay, let's distill this down and make certain abilities better. Yeah, exactly.
So when they put out a new edition, is it a book that they put out?
Yeah,
because I've seen because again, I don't know that much about Dungeons and Dragons, but I've seen like books and books and books. Like the first time I ever played it, a friend of mine was like, hey, let's play. I was like, okay. So he comes over to my room. This was when I was still in the military, and he just brings like stacks and stacks of books, and I'm like, what the fuck? I'm like, what is this, dude?
That's your homework.
I was like,
I was like, and then it's just rolling some dice and and we're shooting the shit, and he's like, and then he's like, well, we got to create your character, and he busts out these sheets and sheets of stuff, and he's like, okay, you got to roll for this, and I'm like, what are you talking about?
That's
like,
when the 2 hours later, come out. They love that stuff.
2 hours later, we're still going over my character. He's like, yeah, here you go, you finally made your character, and I was like, we haven't even started playing. Like, what is holy shit? So when they put out a new edition, what is that? Is that a stack of books or?
Yes. For D&D it is. So it's kind of funny. D&D is actually fairly unique in the sense that each edition is usually a massive shift in how the game plays. And most role-playing games aren't like that. There are a few others that are like that, but most of them, an edition is like they literally just revise some text, clean up a few things, add a couple new things due to popular support or whatever. D&D is unique in that each edition, largely, not every single edition, but most of them are radical shifts in the game mechanics. And there's no real explanation for it other than because it was the first, it certainly wasn't, in a lot of ways the best. Because it was a couple guys in the Midwest who were big war gamers, and they didn't. No, I mean, the first D&D isn't even called a role-playing game. The first couple editions aren't even called a role-playing game because it wasn't a term at the time. Yeah. They were miniatures gamers, war gamers. And so all their systems, all these little subsystems and all this craziness made sense for war gamers who are coming from Napoleonic miniatures gaming and, who read Conan and all this stuff. And it doesn't mean squat to people who, especially nowadays, who are in it to effectively just do Ren Fair roleplay, or something like that. They're different styles of gaming, and both are totally valid, but they do different things. And so D&D has tried to always be like try to capture the zeitgeist, but also stay true to its roots, which is very hard to do. And so there's still a lot of that miniatures wargaming DNA in it. So to answer your question, yeah, D&D does have a lot of bloat because it keeps going through these edition changes while still trying to stay true to its original thing, and that doesn't always work out. The most recent version, though, is very clean overall, and does a good job of kind of handling the past and being a relatively easy to grasp system. It's I bet you played with
This was
edition.
2001.
Yeah,
third edition.
Yeah,
Yeah.
third edition.
That's kind of when I played too.
Yeah.
I remember playing in college, and it is a very hard system from what I've heard. Like, I mean, compared to the 5, it's
Right.
So I remember trying to get in, and I'd played with my cousins. Funny enough, strangely enough, growing up,
Everybody's
I
cousin.
played-
It's always cousin.
I played I played Warhammer. So
Okay.
we played
Oh, nice.
Warhammer 40K, and
Yeah.
we were big like nerds that love to buy all the miniatures and paint them and stuff. So
Yeah.
I did that in like middle school, and then came out to the States and played. I remember hanging out with drama nerds and playing Masquerade, like the
Oh
vampire.
yeah, that was a big one.
That was a big thing in high school. And everyone smoked clove cigarettes and talked. I am David, the Dark Dweller, and stuff like that.
You
And
had
we-
black clothing.
Oh,
Right, of
you
course,
know
yeah.
it.
I did all that. The
Listen
live
to The
action
Cure.
vampire role playing.
Oh, yeah,
we did that too.
We don't bite humans, guys.
Yeah. Oh, I'm so tortured. and then in college playing third edition, and I was just like, I could see where the fun was. I could see. I'm like, but it was frustrating.
Yeah.
And then I didn't play forever until I think meeting up with you guys at Perky Nerd.
Yep.
And it was like, come along. This was 5th edition. It's a lot more streamlined, a lot easier to
Yeah.
get into. And I liked the. Could you multi-class in third or no?
Yeah, but they had all these like crazy restrictions on which classes could multi-class.
Yeah.
You got experience point penalties if the levels in each of your classes were more than X number
Yeah.
of levels off.
Wow.
They
was
call
like-
it Mathfinder, the
Yes.
first edition Pathfinder, which is based on third edition D&D. They call it that for a reason.
Math.
And yeah, it's its own thing. And I certainly don't want to disparage people who play it because there's this.
Suck at math nerds.
Yeah.
You're listening.
Well, now you don't need to do too much math because of D&D Beyond. Like,
Well, yeah.
that was a godsend for me because I hated keeping track of all. But now digitally, I'm so like I have it on my phone, and it's so helpful with.
Talking about the pandemic and like Zoom, and I think it's kind of opened up because I know a lot of friends that play with their family now, and they'll play, like their family in Texas and stuff like that, and they'll all get together Monday night and go on a Zoom call and have D&D Beyond going, and they can all play together. And I think that kind of has made it brought it kind of to the forefront in the past couple of years.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. There's, having been involved with it since, the early 80s, these past few years, pandemic sealed the deal, but it was like a couple of years before Critical Role came out, and does everyone know what Critical Role is?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, I'll explain
I
it.
know some
for
of it.
nerds who don't know. Right?
for the audience.
Yeah.
For the normies.
The normies, who are listening, to enter the nerddom. Yeah.
We got a couple gym bros working out.
I mean,
some more
you know.
stuff. Yeah, talk that nerd shit to me.
So I can beat the shit out of this thing.
Right. So Critical Role came out actually over the hill in Hollywood. They were recording it at I forget the name of it now, but some gaming store. They had rented out the space, and so they were playing this game live for an audience, and it was 5 or 6 voice actors or something like that, all who are big in, especially in anime, but have also done a bunch of video games and stuff like that. So these are professional actors, who know what they're doing and have stage presence. So they started doing that, and it exploded. And I was involved not with them, but with that game store for a short time. I knew some people, and it played some D&D with people who were regulars there and stuff like that. So I was vaguely familiar with it as it was coming up, but it was just blowing up already back then. And within a couple months of it existing, they were selling out the space, making money off of having an audience. And I thought it was at first I thought it was the dumbest idea. It's like, who wants to watch people play a game? I want to play the game, right?
Yeah.
You know, and I still don't understand it honestly to this day. That's just me. Like I get it, but it's just not for me. Anyway, so that got popular, and then something clicked and it just exploded, and then the pandemic happened, which I think like opened the floodgates. So you already had all these people who were like, oh, this is cool to watch. I don't really know what they're doing. I think was not their main audience, but there was this large groundswell, like maybe a significant minority of their audience, where people who didn't really play D&D but knew about it through them and were like, that's pretty cool. I like watching them. And then pandemic happened and it was like, well, now it's easy to play. You have D&D Beyond, you have virtual tabletops, and you have everyone at home looking for stuff to do and looking for connection too. That human element. And so they've already been watching these amazing actors do it and absorbing that, and now they have nothing but time. And so I think that like opened the floodgates. D&D had been on an upswing as far as like sales. I'm big into like the industry numbers and stuff like that. They'd been on an upswing. Like role-playing game industry overall was like 13% year over year for like 10 years prior to that, and then that hit and it was like 180% or some mind-boggling number. No industry did that. You know what I mean? Like that's like looking at the stocks of Zoom, but without the crash of Zoom. After the pandemic.
Right.
Right. Yeah. It just kept going up, and it's still going up, and it has not stopped. And that's why you also have so many more role-playing games coming out in all these different genres, because now everybody is familiar with it.
I mean, to a point now where even Hollywood's like, well, we can make a big budget D&D movie with big stars and put $200 million into it, where that was not on the table for a very long time. And they would, I mean, we had the early 2000s D&D movie.
Which was we sure did.
Boy. And how
wasn't it the 90s?
Might have been 99.
Maybe it was right. Yeah,
but then you had
with the Jeremy Irons.
It was what it was.
Thor Birch.
Was that the one with Marlon Wayans?
Yes,
it was.
Yeah.
He played a thief, I think, or a bard.
Yeah, I believe so.
Something like that.
But then they made I want to say it was like 2010. It might have been a little earlier, but with Jason Statham in The Name of the King or something.
Oh, that's based on based on a video game.
Based on
it was
Dungeon Siege.
Yes.
Oh, my bad. I thought
that was Yui Bowl. Just like was
Yes,
like, I'm gonna make every video game movie.
Yes.
And do it for like $5,
including House of the Dead.
I swore
his masterpiece, House of the Dead. Yes.
Good God.
Or Blood Rain. Remember those?
Yeah.
Ooh, no, I don't. Oh, God,
painful.
Yeah,
but I thought that was a D&D, like inspired from DVD, but
it was. I think Dungeon Siege. I don't know too much about it, so I may be talking out of my butt a little bit here, but I'm pretty sure it was one of the.
That's all we do here anyway.
Okay, fair enough.
Pretty much.
Pretend to be experts.
Yeah, pretty much.
But yeah, I mean, you see the D&D DNA in everything. Like Warhammer wouldn't exist without D&D.
Oh yeah, for sure. Well, that's when you're doing War Game. I was like, that's where my head goes to.
Yeah,
so plethora. Oh, go on.
Okay, go ahead.
The plethora of video games that are inspired by D&D.
Anything where you have XP that builds up your character.
Yeah,
right.
You can.
Hit
the
points.
DNA is right. Yeah,
they literally say hit points. Yeah.
Yeah, Pokemon wouldn't exist without D&D.
Right.
So you guys brought up
and dogfighting. I think both dogfighting and D&D, you get Pokemon out of it.
Dogfighting.
I mean, think about it. Pokemon is just animals fighting each other.
Yeah, are we going to be sponsored by Michael?
Yeah. What's going on here? We do not endorse dogfighting.
No. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying. Anyway,
I'm vegan, guys.
God,
you guys.
You guys brought up Warhammer, which is I wanted to. So how do you? There's similarities, obviously, between Warhammer and D&D, right?
Yeah.
So like what? But I know with. Because you were talking about how like in school you guys got into it. It was funny because when I was in elementary school, we really got into the Warhammer thing. The funny thing is we would collect the characters and show them off, and we'd have like these paint parties where we would paint our characters. But we never played one goddamn game of Warhammer.
That's a collective mentality.
Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, as a collector
every kid
as well,
had
I totally get that.
We had like a dozen each, and we would I begged my mom to go to Games Workshop, which was in Santa Monica at the time. They had a retail store in Santa Monica.
Games Workshop.
Game Workshop. It's been gone for a while, but it was right there on Santa Monica.
Give us free shit.
Give us free shit.
Is it still around?
Stores. I mean, not as a retail. I don't think it's a retail.
Wasn't there a store in the Glendale Galleria? I don't know.
maybe.
Probably.
Maybe
Well,
years
not anymore.
ago.
Not
I know. I
anymore.
remember that.
And but we collect them and we'd have these paint parties. But now I don't think any of us understood how to actually play the game. We knew it was a role playing game, but there was no like, we didn't understand the mechanics of it. And some of us had dice, but it looked like D&D dice. We're like, I don't think that's the right one.
No,
You know?
because it's based on troop movement,
Right,
So it's like,
exactly.
you'd have. I remember getting the rulers out and putting them out and being
Yep.
like, okay, I can move my troops,
Yeah.
3 inches this way, and then this guy can blast like 5 inches this way,
Right.
and it's all about flanking maneuvers and stuff like that. It's,
Well, so I would go to
very
games-
old school war game.
I would go to Games Workshop, and they had the huge, in that store, they had a massive table.
Yeah.
That took up like, it was the entire center of the
That's
store.
the difference. I mean, that's the thing with those games versus D&D,
Right.
Where you're really limited because it's like, okay, you have to buy, how many
You gotta buy
figures you
walls.
gotta buy. You have,
Vehicles.
and you need
Trees.
space. You need
Yeah,
a lot of space. You need a
space,
dining
yeah.
room table.
Which I never understood how, because this table was like, you couldn't just reach across it. It was like
You had to
3
walk
tables.
around.
Yeah,
Oh,
you had
yeah.
to walk around. So it's like, how do you move your troops? Like if they're in the middle of the table, or to the middle of the table. Do you have like
Get
a
the
stick?
old school grabber.
They had sticks
Yeah.
with the little
Little
flat
bar,
thing at the
yeah,
end.
Really?
Push
Okay.
it, yeah,
Push
like
it,
a little
yeah.
shuffleboard.
like a war room, like an actual
Yeah,
war room.
exactly.
That's insane. Yeah.
Yeah.
If I may,
I mean, I was fascinated by it. I never understood.
I'm going to contradict something that Watson actually just said to show off my nerd
Yeah.
cred here.
Let's do it.
So I think one of the things that sets D&D apart from other role-playing games is that wargaming DNA. And although I think there are a lot of people who don't necessarily play it with that mentality, I think at its core, D&D more so than other games is still a tactical role-playing game. And you can read it in the rules. It's very combat focused. It's very looking at measurements of ranges and stuff like that.
Oh, yeah.
More so than most other role-playing
Yeah.
games. And so you can easily take those elements out, which is part of what's cool about role-playing games in general. But at its core, it's in there, right? It's in the wording, it's in the thing. And so D&D actually wants to be the perfect stepping stone between that wargaming thing, but bring it down from these huge units on this giant table to a much more manageable, each player has one unit and you're in the dungeon. And so it takes this big wargaming mentality and brings it down to like almost like survival horror, strategy.
But I think that's why it also is so successful.
Yeah.
Because
It does
it
both.
isn't as daunting as like
Right.
you
It's
need
easy.
a giant room to
Right.
do these battles. It's like
Yeah.
you could literally it's your brain, a basic little setup, and you can go anywhere.
So what's with the figure? Because I've seen people have used figures. Is that a thing? And they use mats and like walls and there you go.
We're looking at
We were
the
recently
icons
at-
of the realms right here.
I just saw this.
Frankenstein.
We have to talk about Frankenstein's later, but yeah.
Oh yeah.
So we're doing a game. Spoilers for next podcast. We're doing a game with Tim. It's gonna be 4 of us and Tim being the moderator, game moderator.
No,
Pardon
you
me.
get dungeon master. Let's just stick with the terms because we are doing D&D, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
we're doing
yeah,
D&D,
okay,
So, and I bought a figure because I was like, I just want to put a figure out there.
Yeah, hell yeah.
So I've seen some players use, but you don't need the figures, right?
No.
Or the mats or any of that crap. None of that.
Yeah, you don't need it. I actually prefer it for when I'm running D&D. Like when I'm running other games, it depends on the game. Like I said, it's the difference between the genre and the tropes of the game. For D&D, I prefer it. So that's something we can talk about.
Just for reference.
Because D&D is, it's called Dungeons and Dragons, so you got to have a dungeon. If you're not running Dungeons and Dragons with a dungeon, what are you doing? If you don't have a dragon show up, what are you doing? Like,
Get out of here.
Get out of here. I mean, there's probably a billion people who do, and their games are awesome. But my preference is,
Right.
it's Dungeons and Dragons. Let's do the dungeon crawl and make that the focus of it. And really get in there with the survival. So I like the tactical positioning. I like the miniatures. I have what are called Pathfinder pawns, which are paper miniatures, so they're easier to store. But they're basically that. You just slap a base on them. You don't have to paint nothing. They're already colored for you. Just punch them out. It's great. But yeah, I prefer with the battle mats. We can talk about. Let's do it. We'll do a session 0 on air. Do you guys want to do it with like the full battle map and all that stuff?
Sure.
I think it'd be cool.
I love having something visual because like my ADHD mind is like,
Yeah, me too.
If I'm trying to listen to you and then I'm just gonna forget, like I don't know where I was,
Right.
Because in my head I'm like, I was by a rock or something, and so I do like, but also coming from playing lots of like board games, I've always had that physical presence to go off of. So I do prefer that.
Which way was I facing?
Yeah, like
Right.
one of my first more complicated board games was like Axis and Allies, and obviously going into the war.
That was one of your
mentality.
first
Well,
complicated ones.
Well,
He
yeah.
was 3 years old. Everyone
no,
else
I
was
was-
shoots and ladders, and he was there like,
You'd already
I gotta take
graduated
out the
college.
axes.
That was like in high school or whatever. Before that was just Monopoly and all the other silly stuff. But I was intrigued by Axis and Allies because I always liked World War II stuff, and so playing that was lots of fun. And the person who brought me into that, or I played that with, like his dad and him were like, they showed me their basement, and they had a huge, like from wall to wall, a Warhammer collection. Like they had the table all decked out. I was like, this is ridiculous, but so cool. But I never played. I just saw what
Same
they had
thing.
there.
Yeah, when I go into Games Workshop, I was fascinated because there's this massive table.
Yeah.
And it was, I mean, the store had built it, but then they would just have characters come in. They had players come in, and they could just throw their own stuff on the vehicles, and so it was already a terrain that was laid out. But I would just sit there and watching these guys, and they would get really into it. They would roll, and they'd be like,
I've seen fights break out. Yeah.
Cheers,
like
and the
screaming
booze.
at each other. Yeah, like fuck, yo, what'd you do that for? That's not it, And they were like screaming at you. And I'm sitting there, a fifth grader, like, wow, this is awesome.
These guys are very single.
Exactly. I don't want to be this.
And here we are.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Have you seen? There's a YouTube video. There's a 40-year-long D&D game going on. This guy turned. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I saw
Have you guys seen that?
No.
I'll send you the YouTube.
I think I actually have seen.
We'll post it
before.
on our Instagram.
Yeah.
This guy turned his basement. He's like a retired. I think he lives in New York, and he's just a retired guy. But he turned his basement into this massive D&D playing area, and he built this massive table. He's got tons of character figurines like stored away. He's got a bunch of dice, and it's like an elite game.
Yeah.
Like if you get invited to it, that's like you just keep coming back to it. And it's like
No, I think you die and go to heaven immediately afterwards.
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Gamer heaven.
Yeah, so we'll post it on our YouTube. But this guy, and then he got his daughter into it, and she plays as well. And so it's just like, so now he's like this very well-known game moderator who just runs this very like prestigious game in his basement. So I think it's amazing that that's what fans are willing to go. That they're willing to do that for the love of the game. They just
It's no different than people that have like baseball pennants up in the room. It's like it's stats. It's just stats. So.
And then we even have like people who you would think wouldn't be like D&D nerds, like Joe Manganiello.
Oh yeah.
Who's on True Blood?
Huge,
who's
And he's
talking
doing
about
this-
these gym bros are listening to our podcast. He's probably one of them. Shout out to Joe if he's listening. But he's a huge D&D fan, and he does a lot of prezios, which are like these like auctions for charity. And one of the things he offers, he's done it a couple times. It's like have a D&D game with me and a couple people.
And he's got the same basement type thing where apparently it's like it's all set up for a game.
Yeah.
And who is his wife, Sofia Vergara? She doesn't.
Yes.
She's not allowed down there.
She's-
Probably doesn't want to go down there anyway. But yeah.
Going off of what Stan brought up with the long running game, what has been the longest game you've ever run through? I mean, since you
Good question.
Yeah, good question.
So yeah, I'm not sure if I have one. So I've had a couple that were like year long things that I ran. Yeah, I don't think I've ever gone much past one full like calendar year, or not a calendar year, but like 12 months of regular gaming. But those ones that I've done like that were literally like every week. I mean, almost no cancellation. Wow. So a weekly game for a year. And I've only done a few of them, but I did a couple of those. One was right around the tail end of second edition Dungeons & Dragons, so late 90s, I want to say. Damn. In my friend Drew's basement. Shout out to Drew.
Shout out Drew. That's my boy. That's my boy.
Yeah, and I've been a player in some that have probably gone about that long.
Okay.
Maybe one was a little bit longer, but yeah, only less than a handful. Less than a handful have done that. Most of them, I think, a common refrain is, once, especially as you get into the adult years, but even before that, like scheduling becomes a thing.
Oh yeah.
No.
Somebody, one guy gets a girlfriend, and you're like,
That's it.
Mom, can you drive me over to Tim's house?
yeah.
So when you're coming up with your story, I mean, do you always try to have an end in sight, like, or an end goal? to reach?
Well, here's what I can tell you how I was a bad DM for a long time. So I used to always plot with like a big plot with an end in sight. So I did that for the longest time, and then you get let's see. I've had maybe like 3 that got to an end, right? And then about 45 or however many, probably more than that. I've probably done more than that. So probably closing in on 100 games that have never gotten anywhere.
Wow, man.
We still played. We had fun.
Yeah.
But they just never got to like the structured ending of it.
Right.
And so after doing that, a gazillion times.
So many big bads just sitting around waiting.
Yeah.
Still,
all these
to this
reveals
day,
that have
20
never
years
been
later,
revealed.
or
Yeah.
like, gee, they're not coming.
Right. And
A dragon with a big beard.
And who cares about those characters, right? Only you. Only the
Right,
guy
right.
who
Yeah.
created it. And so
Yeah.
you're like, well, what the hell am I doing here? So that's when this the phrase, create situations and not stories comes in handy, because then
that makes
you
sense.
create the things and you think about how those things can be used at the table at the time. And so if you come up with a great idea for a big bad boss, that's cool. Get to that session immediately. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like run it, and you might hold it in your back pocket for a later game. Like you might collaborate with your friends and come up with something that's lower level and doesn't work for that specific scene this one time, and that's fine. But you create that thing knowing you can jump right into it
Right.
when it makes sense to do so, and so you've no longer wasted your prep. And so that's for the budding DMs out there who are listening, don't waste your time creating long stories and end like a really hard ending. Create the situation, create those tools you need to have a cool session that your players show up and ruin, because that's what they're
Yeah.
going to do. And it's going to be fun. It's going to be really fun
Yeah.
when they interact with it and blow stuff up.
Has there been any characters or villains that you've made that you never reached, but then you were like, I really like these, but I'm gonna bring them into this new game that I started and just change their name or just
Yeah, I've done that a million times.
Okay.
Like, anytime you can reuse stuff. Like I said, earlier on in my gaming career, I didn't think to do that, and so I probably have a lot of wasted papers sitting there with cool stats and cool encounters that I'll never look back on. But once I got into the habit of creating the situations and creating stuff I knew I would use, and learning organizational tools, which wasn't hard. I make it sound like it's homework. It really wasn't hard. It's just like you create stuff that can be slotted into different things. So you can create a dungeon and you can create 10 bad guys and just use one of them for that particular dungeon, and then the next time you play with a different group of players, you use the same dungeon and a different bad guy.
True.
And, or whatever.
How important is it to you as a GM when for people to, like, we talk a lot about like class and like there's different, like, chaotic good, chaotic if people start acting differently than their character would or make decisions, do you penalize? Do you just let them go and just say, well, okay, that's the way they want to go with the story? Like, how do you I guess work that out for yourself?
So that's a great question. There's a lot of stuff that goes into that. My gut reaction to anything is I don't care what the players kind of bring to the table in terms of, and I don't mean I don't care what they bring, but I'm not there to police what they bring.
That's
I mean,
that's a good
so
word.
if somebody like has,
Yeah.
my character is Conan, right? He's kind of selfish. He's a little bit greedy. But
He's a talk show host.
He's a talk show. He was a governor for a short time. But he'll ultimately do the good, do good deeds, right? He'll do things for the right reasons when presented. I'm not there to be like, oh, you're playing what alignment? Like you have to do these things. I don't care about that. Like I'm not there to police your fun. Like you create whatever you want to do. Now, there's another side to that though, where there's the kind of meta thing, and this is something that I think a lot of people lose sight of or don't do enough. There's kind of like the social contract. Let's put it that way. There's a social contract of what you're bringing to the table as a person, and you want to bring a character that's fun in a group. And so the only times I police anything is I police the pace of the game. If the game's slowing down, I'll throw stuff at people or I'll ask people what do you think would happen in order to get things moving again.
Yeah.
So I police that a little bit because that's everyone's fun, right?
Yeah.
And the only other piece I'll police is when people are stepping on other people's toes in terms of fun by what they're playing. So what I mean is your character and what their alignment isn't going to matter to me. But when you're like, oh, I'm going to steal this thing from this other player because I want it.
Right.
Not because it makes a good story,
Right.
or because it would make sense for it to happen. Like that's when I'm like, no, this that's not cool. And that's the only time I really even care about that kind of stuff. And sometimes I'll, the best thing to do obviously is talk as an adult to the person and say, hey, this is kind of problematic. Why are you doing it this way? But that's when you can rely on some of the stuff on the sheet. If it's not something that can be solved as easily as, hey, just don't do that.
Right.
You can be like, hey, but your character's a good guy, and these other party members, like your team. Why would you steal from your team member? Like,
True.
They're going to help you with this item. Like, you don't need it, or whatever. You can. So you have that tool, and I think that's an interesting thing that you can, as a game master, rely on both things. One is talk to people like adults and solve problems like human beings, but also you can rely on the character tools and how the game works a little bit. The tropes of D&D is that, you're a D&D party, you're a team. Like, you're working together. You don't survive if you don't work together.
Right.
Yeah.
So a whole bunch of inter-party conflict isn't going to work. I mentioned that Smallville role-playing game.
Yeah.
Based on
That sounds awesome.
It's one of the best role-playing games. I don't know how they made it so good. I'm not even that big of a Smallville fan, honestly. Sorry. But the game's amazing. Anyway, you saw Smallville. It's all about people lying to each other, and you know what I mean, and like, or trying to like date each other, but unrequited love and all this stuff.
Right.
And the game mechanics work that way, and so that game works by you coming to the table, and one person is playing the Clark Kent who will not lie but has to keep a secret, right? That is Superman. And then you have someone else playing Lex Luthor who's going to be lying to him all the time and working underhanded, but that's still his friend. They grew up together. And so, but that going into it. And so there's stuff on the character sheet and there's mechanics in the game that work with that, but you go in with a different mentality based on the game. So it's all about leveraging both the meta discussion and who you are as players, and the leveraging the game mechanics themselves to solve those kinds of issues.
That sounds awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. What's the longest game that you've played just for like a one time? How many hours has it gone?
So back in this was, I think, just around the start of college. A bunch of friends got together. It was kind of like our swan song for a campaign, and I think there was 12 of us in a room.
Oh wow!
And about 8 of us lasted for the whole time, and we played for something like 7 or 8 hours. We had a whole sleepover.
Wow.
12
men enter, 1 man leaves.
Yeah, that's right.
Was there maybe an hour break in between, or was it just straight?
We pretty much played straight through.
Wow.
And you were the moderator for this as well?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So that was Vampire the Masquerade, actually.
I've seen that. When I was a kid. I used to see that all the time. Advertisements for that. I had no idea what it was.
Huge in the mid '90s. Yeah.
It rivaled D&D at the time.
Yeah, that's right.
Speaking of rival D&D, I forget what company I read about, but they Trolls and Goblins.
and Trolls.
Yeah.
Is that what you're talking about?
Yes. Yeah.
Just
got purchased. Yeah.
Trolls and Goblins?
it was like their attempt
Tunnels
at
and Trolls.
Oh, Tunnels and Trolls.
Sorry, Tunnels and Trolls.
Instead of Dungeons and Dragons. See?
Yeah. It's very, very different. It was there.
Tunnels and Trolls. Isn't that just Jersey?
I mean,
Chad.
I mean, yeah. You got the. I forget what the Lincoln Tunnel.
Yeah, there is a tunnel to get into.
Yeah,
that's
right.
right.
Wow.
But no, I heard about that. I was like, oh, that should be exciting. It might push D&D to like up their game with certain things.
No, it won't. So yeah, Tunnels and Trolls was one of the first. I guess you would say it was like pretty much the second role-playing game. I don't know if that's the exact order, but it was like one of the first, and it was just a tweak of the D&D system to make it simple, because we mentioned before the mechanics being based on war games and being convoluted and stuff when it originally created. So this one guy saw the game, saw the pictures on the cover, and was like, this is awesome. And then he read the rules and he's like, I don't understand a goddamn word.
I'll be honest, I was that kid.
Yeah. So was I. 5 years old? Come on.
I remember having the Monster Handbook as a kid. Yeah. And all I would do was, it was gorgeous pictures of all these like beholders and werewolves and, I
the
was
naked
just like,
Medusa.
What's the name of this again?
I remember being like, in awe and just like taken away by all these different characters. But then, then next to all these stats, and I was like, I don't understand any of that stuff.
It's all like abbreviations. So
Yeah.
you have to like find a reference key. Yeah.
Oh,
It's good. So Tunnels and Trolls,
Wow.
the guy was like, okay, I'm going to create a game that actually makes sense. And so he did that. I forget his name off the top of my head, but anyway, he did that, released it, and it was wildly popular. And what made it, it never reached the heights of D&D, and I don't think it ever will. But one of the things that set it apart was that they would release solo game modules. And so D&D is all about the party, right?
Yeah.
But what happens if you're living in the Midwest, or say you're living in like North Dakota, and your nearest friend is like 20 miles away?
Yeah, true.
You're not playing with a party very often. So they Tunnels and Trolls had these solo game books, and they released those very early on in the life of it. And so it became extra popular because of that, because that now people could actually play the game and engage with the game mechanics without needing other people around. Which was
That's nerd Nevada for a lot of people. They're such introverts. They're just like,
all right.
I don't want to deal with people. Oh gosh.
He's just rolling by himself.
I mean, so people were playing back then. So there's many places where you just literally couldn't find other players.
That makes sense.
Yeah,
So,
that makes a lot of sense.
but anyway, so yeah, it got purchased. Well, I forget by the name of the company, but it's a big company.
Yeah, it was
big board game or video games.
I'm blanking on the name. I read it like a couple days ago, and I was like, oh, that's
They're definitely going to do something big with it. But I don't think
enough to
I don't
pressure on D&D.
The thing with D&D,
Come on, guys. TNT sounds just as cool.
TNT. Isn't that an AC/DC song? But the thing about D&D is it's the 800-pound gorilla in the room, and I don't see anything
It's not gonna
in the
budge.
industry touching it at this point. There will be something that comes along and unseats it eventually. There has to be. That's how all industries work, right? But D&D just has that cultural cache. 9 out of 10 people who don't know what a role-playing game is, if you say D&D and or you say role-playing game, they immediately associate the two. And so that,
Especially now with the movie, yeah.
right.
Well, and I remember the cartoon in the
Kleenex.
80s. I mean,
right.
that cartoon I loved.
There was a
and
cartoon in the 80s in
Oh
D&D?
yeah. It was.
I don't remember that.
Oh, you are about to discover something amazing.
Really? I'm looking it up now.
check it out. But it's
might have
really.
seen
I
it.
remember watching that, just going like, "What is this?" And it's just Dungeons and Dragons.
Was
I
it
like,
good or was it?
It was great. I mean, like
It's
know,
ridiculous.
yeah.
I don't know if it's good.
Was
but
it
it's
before
ridiculous.
the animated Hobbit?
No, it was
No,
after.
it was after.
That was in
It
the
was after.
70s.
This
Oh,
this
that
was
was
like
the
in the
same-
height
oh,
of like Saturday morning
okay.
That shit
cartoon
was
stuff.
terrible.
So this would have been like
Animated Hollywood was terrible.
86, 87 maybe.
Well, I think I want to say it was 84, but maybe it aired later. I don't know exactly, but I know it was the last thing that Gary Gygax worked on before he got ousted from TSR at the time.
Oh, wow.
They did a whole corporate takeover crazy
Shit.
thing,
But
which is
you
worth
know-
reading about.
But the main plot of the cartoon was a group of kids, like teenagers, get kind of sucked into the Dungeons and Dragons world.
They ride a roller coaster that's called the Dungeons and Dragons ride, and it goes into like this little cave as part of the ride, and then they end up in the D&D
Was
world.
this live action
Stupid.
first and then they get sucked into the...
No.
No.
Okay, no.
That's Captain E.
That's Captain
Nintendo,
EO, Captain something, yeah.
Captain N.
Captain N, yeah.
Yeah,
the Game
Captain
Master,
N.
yeah.
Oh yeah, forgot about that.
It's the same thing.
It's the same
story.
story.
Yeah.
It's basically they watched Tron and was like, "Well, just do that."
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Vampire the Masquerade. What? Okay, glad you guys brought that up because now it's bringing up all these memories. Like I would see it, like when I was in school, I would see advertisements for it or like a book for it, and I was like, "What is that? Is it the same company that does D&D or is it
No.
really?" Okay, so what? Can you give me like a synopsis of exactly what it is?
So this company White Wolf, they kind of came out of nowhere. They were making magazines, like doing reviews of all the role playing games that were popular at the time. They made this magazine, and they eventually were like, "What's the next step from being a magazine about this super niche industry? Let's make our own game." And so I don't remember what the first one was that they made. It's probably obscure and no longer around. But then Vampire the Masquerade was the second one, and the idea was, it was the 90s. All role-playing games up to that point, with a few exceptions, were either fantasy or sci-fi. There's very little modern day type things, and there was very little in terms of horror. You had the Call of Cthulhu was a game that had been around for a while, and that was very 1920s, like that kind of like pulpy kind of horror. So, there was nothing dark. And 90s were The Crow, right? And and Trent Reznor. You know what I mean? Like that defines.
And Nirvana.
I like Nirvana. Yeah,
just distill the 90s. It's just Trent Reznor and The Crow.
It's like, oh yeah, and you get it, the reference.
You could probably remove The Crow and just be Trent Reznor. Let's be honest. Like he sums up the 90s, right? He's a very sad man, and and amazing. Also,
Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
Buffy came out. Like, so that's what it was. And so they took the zeitgeist of that era and just were like, okay, so it's the modern era, and this is pre-cell phones, which is important for this. So they're like, how do we make modern horror work? And they're like, okay, so there's a whole society of vampires, and they know they can't make themselves known to the human populace because humans are way more numerous, and they'll just rise up, stake us, and we're dead. So they have to be secretive about it. And so Vampire the Masquerade, the reason it's called the Masquerade is the vampires have collectively created this culture of secrecy in order to keep themselves hidden, but they're vampires, right? They have to suck blood, and they have to keep their territory, because if there's too many vampires, there's going to be a problem, and it's going to be really hard to keep themselves secret if they suck too many people's blood and people die. So the whole game is around this balance of them trying to keep the secrecy, trying to keep their territory, and also try to hold on to some shreds of their humanity, because if you're immortal and you live long enough to see all of your family die, eventually your heart grows cold and
there's
dead,
like different levels
of
vampire you could be.
Really?
Right.
I mean, it's very much like, I feel like whoever wrote the Underworld movies played a lot of Masquerade.
The Underworld movies are like a direct ripoff, and in fact there was a lawsuit
from
White Wolf to them.
Wow.
I can't remember which way it went, but it was definitely one of those things where it's like, it's clear the DNA is there, but also maybe not worth an actual trademark lawsuit.
Right.
Anyway, it very much so.
Yeah.
Underworld.
It was the character of Blade, kind of, probably.
Oh, yeah.
Was that? I don't know when that character was created, but I would assume that probably
Blade, the character, came from Marvel Comics in the 70s, but he was very much just like a Van Helsing kind of character.
Yeah.
He wasn't a half-breed until...
Daywalker.
Yeah, that wasn't until the 90s. Like,
Okay.
Exactly. Yeah, the movie changed his origin story because of that zeitgeist was there of this like horror under the surface of our society living among us type thing. And that's why they changed Blade to be that. They're like, this is a thing that captured people's imaginations.
Yeah.
White Wolf did that with Vampire the Masquerade.
I actually wonder if the 90s Spider-Man cartoon inspired them to change the origin in the movie, because he was a half vampire.
Oh, that's true.
In the cartoon.
Yeah.
And it's funny you say that. So I was like, oh, maybe the cartoon started that whole.
So it says, I looked it
egg.
up. So it said I looked it up, and
You
then
got
so
lost.
White Wolf did sue Sony, which was the studios behind Underworld, and they said, but they reacted very quickly to it. So the announcement to sue was released on September 3rd, 2003, and because Sony, I guess, had put so much money and resources into, and they were expecting it to be their next major franchise, which it kind of was.
Yeah.
Both parties agreed to settle privately, and Underworld was released on September 19th.
Yeah, that makes
So basically, so 16 days later, it released. They settled. They're like, hey, whatever you guys want, basically, it seems. But obviously, it's we're not going to know because it.
It's so funny
if
because
any lawyers at Sony are listening.
Please tell us the skinny.
Yeah.
It's so funny though, because you read Vampire the Masquerade's the kind of like the metaphysics of how vampires work in that game, and it's a straight rip of Anne Rice's.
Oh yeah,
Vampires.
that's
I
another.
was thinking the same thing too, because you said there's levels of vampires in Anne Rice's story.
Which would have
Some
been-
are not human at all. Almost
How they're created, I think it's like you drain all the blood from the human, and then you bite your wrist and feed them your blood, and that's what turns them into a vampire. It's like giving some of your vampire power to them.
Sounds like True Blood as well.
Yeah, like
True
that,
Blood,
that was
Buffy,
straight out of Anne
it's-
Rice.
Yeah.
Buffy,
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, obviously they pulled a lot of that from Bram Stoker.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
And that's why
It's a rip-off
lawsuits
of
are.
it.
Yeah. It's like,
Yeah.
is this really original? Like,
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So what was it about that game that got you interested on top of D&D?
oh well, I listened to Trent Reznor.
Oh, that makes sense.
I was actually.
It also
so-
turned
We
into
all
vampire.
wore leather trench coats in the 90s.
we
That's,
did,
you
right.
know, and had our Doc Martin boots.
And
Yep.
dark sunglasses.
yeah,
But we look cool.
We did.
So fuck you.
yeah.
yeah, that was lit. So funnily enough, the same cousin, he had a friend who was into that game. He was like one of the first people to buy it probably or something like that. But he bought Vampire the Masquerade and he was like, I want to run this, and I got nobody who's willing to play. And so my cousin called me up and my brother and was like, hey, you guys want to play this? And we're like, we'd been playing superheroes and D&D like heroics and all this stuff, and we're like, yeah, this horror sounds cool. Let's change it up a little bit.
I won't lie. The only reason I really did play it was like the only gaming group where girls were there. You know, because
That
girls
was
really
what made it
dug
popular,
it.
yeah.
You know, like girls were like, oh yeah, it's a cool goth game. You
Yeah.
know, like, you know, but like, yeah, you ask girls like, oh, let's go play superheroes. They're like, get out of here.
Yeah.
You know,
Let's run around in spandex.
Right.
And Vampire specifically hit on this live action thing. So you know the whole Ren Fair joke.
yeah, oh yeah,
of
the
D&D.
LARPing.
LARPing became big.
I
in
knew
part
kids
because of Vampire.
running around in Griffith Park as vampires.
Yeah.
Probably still do to this day.
Yeah. Yeah, it was a great way for goths to go hang out and not have to spend money.
Right, exactly.
Wasn't there? Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say I actually played a few sessions of the live action version of Vampire in nightclubs. Like we would, a couple people would call each other up and be like, let's play a session. And so we'd go and we would quote unquote maintain that masquerade by going, and everybody thinks we're just there to see whatever music or listen to the DJ or whatever, but we were actually playing the game while also listening to music and hanging out. And
Oh,
You
wow.
did
so it's
kill a
fun.
girl
It's
by draining the blood.
well, I mean,
But,
obviously.
I mean, you commit.
yeah, I mean, if you're gonna play the game, play the game.
That's how you get admitted to the club.
Yeah,
I
exactly.
mean, she just failed her stamina roll.
Ah.
I don't know.
Wasn't there a werewolf one as well? That was
Yeah,
that
so-
was,
Same company, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
White
White,
Wolf.
so White Wolf's big, their plan. This was an early and good business plan for a role playing game company before they got into the whole brand recognition thing. They knew they were going to do Vampire, and they're like, what else can we have with a similar theme of like keeping itself secret but being supernatural? And they immediately hit on, I want to say it was five things. There's the vampire was one of them. Werewolf was the second one. Mage was one. So like the whole Harry Dresden type character,
Dresden.
Yeah.
you know, type of thing. And then Wraith was another one, and that was ghosts living, you know, kind of among people or in kind of in a parallel world next to them. And then Changeling was the last one, and that was these kind of fey creatures from, you know, sort of like the fairy land, but they're now trapped in kind of a human form in our world, and they're trying to save humanity from the banality of existence.
Nice.
Yeah,
I want to do a
it's really cool,
sexy
actually.
mummy book.
yeah.
They did a mummy one.
Oh, really?
They got a
They
zombie
eventually-
one. I call a zombie one.
Oh, there you go.
They eventually did one for like almost anything you could
Everything.
think
Of
of, you know, because you got to make money.
Did you ever play the werewolf one or any of
Yeah,
those?
played the werewolf one extensively because that one was a little bit more high powered and superhero-y because, you know, werewolves are tough, right?
Right,
So-
fast, yeah.
So yeah, you get to be badass and kill shit.
Now, but did you in the werewolf one? Was it that these people were like unable to stop their transformation, or they were able to control it, like in what's it called, Twilight?
I think from what I remember is like there was stages. So it's like you could be like a Teen Wolf kind of looking werewolf where you have more human characteristics, but then you could go straight on like full like I just turned into a fucking wolf.
Yeah.
Like Jack Nicholson in Wolf.
I'm marking my territory.
More like the Howling.
No, wait.
Howling, yes, I love those
Or
movies.
American
Classic.
Werewolf in London.
Yeah, like you could there was different stages of the werewolf traits that you could take on, and
Does Wolfman have nards? Wolfman has nards.
Wolfman's got nards. I'm
right.
wearing a Monster Squad t-shirt.
That's right.
Speaking of the werewolf and unable to control their transformation, in Monster Squad, there's that really sad scene of the Wolfman who was unable to stop his transformation, and Dracula's using him to his own to buttress his
For a kids
his
movie,
power.
that's
there's some
deep.
themes in that.
Oh yeah. And then the
love
werewolf is like he wants to stop killing because he can't control it. And then at the end they shoot him with a silver bullet, and as he's dying, he looks at the kid and says thank you, and he dies. Like,
Yeah.
holy shit!
Yeah.
Oh god.
That kid's in therapy for years
Yeah,
after that.
it's so
I shot a man.
Yeah. What was the name of the werewolf? Rope? Do you remember?
Werewolf the Apocalypse.
Apocalypse.
Because so that in that one, another reason why it was a little bit more superhero-y in some ways was the werewolves they had this close tie to the moon and nature. And so modern humanity, with all of its pollution and all this stuff, they were actually like trying to fight against that and try to make the world, try to bring it back to its more natural ways.
That's an interesting story.
Because it vaguely and slowly killed them as the world died. Like their abilities died.
No shit.
So it was kind of like almost like an eco-terrorist's wet dream of a role-playing game.
That's interesting.
Yeah, the themes in the White Wolf games were they just, I mean, they hit
That's
it
really
out of the park.
I think I remember them doing like a Vampire Masquerade TV pilot, I want to say.
Oh no, they did a whole show, Kindred the Embraced.
Kindred the Embraced.
Was it
That was
TV show?
5 or 7 episodes. The thing that killed it was they had Aaron Spelling produce it at the height of 90210 and what was the other one?
Melrose
Melrose Place. Thank
Melrose
you.
Place. Oh, wow.
It was at the height of those, and he bought into it, which made some sense with what he was making, but they turned it into much more of like
teen romance.
that feel.
Oh,
Yeah, and
that's
so
a bummer.
it was like. It was Twilight before Twilight and way worse. And I don't like Twilight.
And Vampire
so
Diaries before Vampire Diaries.
No,
exactly.
yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. It was pretty bad. It had like one good episode. Like once they knew they were getting canceled, they're like, "Oh, we gotta switch this up." And so they had one good episode where there's this great gunfight in the middle of.
That's right, because all the I remember the vampires having guns.
Yeah, they
Never
were all
heard
like
of it.
mobsters. And
yeah.
it was really weird.
What? Wow.
It made
Kindred the Embrace. I've never
Yeah.
heard of that. Ah.
Check it out on
It's-
YouTube.
I gotta check it out. I gotta check it out. Is there a particular character that when you're not playing the moderator, is there a particular character that you have that you enjoy?
I've never stuck with characters for very long. I've always been more interested in like playing different characters to get a feel for like the different rules and stuff like that when I'm playing new games. So I very rarely stick with one character. I've had one who had sort of a long tenure in. I was like doing what is it called, Adventurers League, I think is the D&D thing. It's like a organized play thing, and I went to these D&D live events actually right before the pandemic. They were doing them in Hollywood, and so I went with this character, and it was so stupid. It's
like a tournament setting.
Yeah, and I don't mean the events were stupid. Those events were awesome. My character was stupid. The events were absolutely cool, and Adventures League is very fun because everybody gets to join in and play the same adventures, so then they can talk about them and share their experiences, which is really cool.
That sounds good.
Yeah.
But I was playing this character who I'd played in a different campaign many eons ago. The character died, and somebody had a resurrection spell, so they resurrected her. And I rolled poorly on the chart. So when you get resurrected under a certain spell, not all of them, but some of them, you roll on this chart to see what you come back as, because you may not come back as your same character exactly.
wow.
You might be a different race or something like that. Just this one spell had that. So I rolled and I got a dog. So I came back as a dog, and I was like, "How am I going to play this?" So the GM at the time ruled that I could play the character, and he could talk normal, like a normal person, and he would act as a normal person. There'd be no special rules. He would just look like a dog and seem like a dog.
But no thumbs. How do you?
Yeah, how do you
and we
hold
just
weapons?
explained it like he held stuff with his tail or in his mouth, whatever. It didn't matter as long as it didn't change the rules. And so I brought that character to these Adventures League games, and I kept having to be like, I didn't know if the DMs would let me play a dog. I was like, because they might think about the rules and like, how do we change it? And I was like, I'll play him as a human in every way. He just appears as a dog. Like nothing. And they were always fine with it and even encouraging of it. They're like, you're going to be a beautiful little puppy. That's great. And so it became
What
this
class
like,
was he?
he was actually a split class cleric wizard.
Oh,
so he had a
spell casting dog.
Yeah,
healing
who
and
loved
attack.
Jesus.
And, and every time he did something good, they're like, "That's a good boy."
I got that a lot. It was
Just an
fantastic.
arcane stick in your mouth just to amp the spells.
You're like, I basically was Cosmo.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I got exactly, and I had a miniature for him because this
that's awesome.
this company, Steambox or I forget what they're called, but this company came out with these little fantasy animal D&D miniatures, and so that's where this character came from.
That's
in this
awesome.
incarnation. So I had a perfect, look like a German Shepherd who wore a wizard's hat. It's a beautiful miniature.
That's
Actually,
gorgeous,
that's a
yeah.
great avatar. Yeah.
Yeah, you can find it. I think they're called Animal Adventures or the sets of miniatures. You can find them online.
I just wanted
right
to be
now.
like a barbarian, so you have to like carry this giant club around.
There's-
But
Yeah.
I think there's one in that set that's like what are the dogs in the snow with the little barrel?
Saint Bernard.
Saint Bernard. Yeah, it's like
yeah.
a Saint Bernard with a battle axe on his
that's
back.
awesome.
It's fucking great.
He still looks super cute swinging it around.
Yeah.
What a good boy. What do you think of the D&D movie? I know we've talked about it before amongst ourselves, but what do you think about it?
Yeah, I love you guys' conversation about it, honestly, because you guys brought up a lot of great points, like about how people can be totally clueless about D&D and still enjoy that movie because they don't spend a lot of time on stuff, and then the people who are familiar with D&D still get those few winks and nods of like, there's that my favorite scene. I think you, Watson, might have been the one who brought it up, but anyway, when you guys were talking about it, Zank is about to tell them like the whole history of the evil wizards of Thay and how they became, and as soon as he starts, like Chris Pine's character is like, a history lesson, and you get that wink. That's exactly what players would do. That's the part where their eyes glaze over. The DM is expounding upon some pre-written dialogue in their adventure of how this cool thing happened.
They've worked on for 3 hours.
Right.
And the players couldn't give
this.
two shits.
Right. They're like, where's the treasure?
Yeah. Exactly.
Or even Chris Pine's character, when he's before the judges and he's like, that person should be here. That's almost like the GM, like if someone's like left the room for a minute, it's like, wait, we should wait till he's here to really get...
Exactly.
Yeah.
I
love that scene.
So good.
So I loved it. I watched it twice. It's a very good movie. It's not, it's not like award winning in any way. So, and I think that's fine. And I think there's a lot of people who are wondering why it's not award winning or why it's not making 10 times its budget back. And, it's just not the kind of movie that's going to do that. And I think that's fine. It's the kind of movie that is going to be well liked for a long time. People are going to rent the hell out of it and buy it.
It's very evergreen. Like, it's
right.
Very much so.
The dialogue is so witty, and having seen it twice, my big takeaway was that there's so much going on throughout the movie in the dialogue, but also Chad and I talked about this a little bit before. Also, like the visual stuff that's going on. There's so much going on in the movie that you can revisit it multiple times and get something new out of it. Like how the mage uses his spell component pouch, which is like a dial, and they use the camera tricks with that.
Good.
Right?
Yeah. Beautifully done. Yeah, I know. I kind of hope, like, I'm sure it's going to get a sequel because it did do really well.
Yeah, it did okay.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So but I kind of hope that they don't use those same characters. I hope that we can expand on the world and go with like another guild or group or something like that, because I like those characters, but I felt like their story was very much complete by the end.
Yeah.
Right.
So, I mean, maybe
you
you could have like Simon, the mage, show up, something that'll bridge it, but...
Well, I mean, it could be a whole nother movie with those characters, same characters in the universe, but we're following another group. But also, I was thinking in the sense of, there's a lot of anthology shows and things out there where they recast the characters. Yeah, and just as new characters. Would you rather want that, or would you just want a completely new cast of?
See, I feel like that works well for television series.
Yeah.
I don't know if people would get that in a movie.
True.
Like,
for
what
D&D,
happened to his daughter? That.
Oh,
for D&D, like specifically the world they created for this, but for D&D in general, the beauty is that there's these huge worlds, right, that they've created for the published campaigns. When it's you creating your own thing, you don't have to do a lot to get a game going, right? But the people who've published D&D, they've had this one Forgotten Realms campaign setting, which is what this movie is set in. That's been going on since 1960 something, before D&D was even a thing, because the guy who created it was going to write novels, and then he found D&D later and turned it into a D&D world, and then they bought it from him. So, a little history there. But my point is, there's a million
lesson.
Another history. But the point is that there's so much to this world, and there's so many stories that they can tell, and so many characters that they can kind of do whatever they want. And if they want to bring back a few of these characters, they're there to use. And if they don't want to bring them back, there's a million others. And there's a lot of people who are,
because they didn't really kill. I mean, they didn't kill off any real characters except for the Red Witch.
Mainly
right?
just bring back Hugh Grant. I want Hugh Grant back.
Right.
Oh, he's great.
And
he's
really not only great characterization, but also a great character who's got just enough redemption possibility that he can come back
he's got
and work with them
charisma,
again.
for sure.
Right. Yeah. He's like a bad guy.
Yeah.
But there's just enough, because he's not the main bad guy.
Right.
True. It's perfect.
Yeah.
So yeah, they got a million other stories they could tell there. I
Oh,
don't
yeah.
I don't think they need to do anything crazy with casting. Bring some people back. Bring get rid of all of them. It doesn't matter. You've got this wide world that they've made interesting. And
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of like diehard D&D fans who wanted Drist. He's this super popular character in the novels. So every D&D novel just about that's been on the New York Times bestsellers, and there's been many of them, have this character Drist, who's this drow elf. He's a cool character. Everyone wanted to be him to be the main guy in the first D&D movie, and I'm so glad they didn't, because you'd have to explain elves in detail.
Right.
You'd have to, why is this guy running around with this weird obsidian skin and shock white hair and two swords and a panther? Like, what is that? And that makes no sense, like, just saying that. So you'd have to explain all that in a way that makes sense.
I think Hasbro just released an action figure of that character,
they sure
too.
did.
So I'm just like, there's some, through, like, people will figure it out, I guess.
Right.
Well, I mean, they can always do the comically, what they did in this movie, comically explain, like, the background of so and so.
Right.
Just like a quick.
I'm not saying you can't use them,
Yeah,
but
no.
the point is, like, you had a very likable human cast.
Yeah.
You didn't have to
Right.
explain
Yeah, I
anything.
don't think, I mean,
they
other
didn't
than
even
there
explain
was the
Doric.
tiefling.
Yeah. And they don't even explain that hardly.
Right.
Yeah.
No,
Like,
yeah.
but
She was the
no.
only one that wasn't, everything else was human, right?
Simon is half elf, I think, but
Yeah, he was.
Yeah.
might as well be human, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah.
Pretty much, yeah. Because we're a little racist, I guess.
Well, no, I mean,
Fuck
I
elves.
think it's right, though. It
Species,
It
I
eases,
Oh, yeah, they
it eases
changed
you
the
into
name now,
the, I mean,
species.
like,
Stuff.
they do start the movie with, like, a griffin person. Like,
Right.
and, you know,
Right,
it's
yeah,
like,
yeah.
Going over
Yeah,
that.
they let you know that the stuff is out there, so
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
is perfect seeding for any sequels. You want to
Right.
have the dark elf, bring him in the sequel, but having just some dude with a guitar as the main guy and,
Yeah.
and a couple humans around him
Love that.
is perfect.
Yeah.
It works out so well as an intro, and now they can kind of start going in these weird.
And him
directions.
being a bard, like, not being, like, a ranger or a paladin or something like that, where it's just like... okay,
what you would typically think.
Yeah,
would
he's
be,
not a-
He's always a swordsman, you know?
Yeah, exactly. He's
But-
like, I like that. His whole
Yeah.
thing is to scheme and to plot.
Right.
The twist in the sequel is going to be that he was never a bard. He's a mastermind rogue, and he was just saying he was a bard
Right.
in order to get into the Harpers, I think.
Oh.
Interesting.
Plot twist on the mechanics.
Tim's
There you
writing
go.
the news
Yeah.
the next
Yeah.
There you go. Yeah, he's working on the next
You
one.
heard it here,
Because he
folks.
never casts a spell. Bards cast spells, man.
Oh, that's true.
I saw every time he
they
turned
do?
to the guys and was like, "This can work. This can work." I was like, "That's bardic inspiration."
Yeah.
he's just laying it on, right?
Yeah, he does do the inspiration. You're right.
Also,
Yeah.
when he sings, he did change their mood to
Yeah.
a better, to keep them motivated to keep
Yeah,
going.
maybe they just removed any reference to it being spells.
That's-
It's
yeah,
just more
that's
subtle.
true.
Ah,
Yeah.
interesting.
Brilliant.
Yeah, it certainly seems like it was really written by people who play the game
Oh, yeah.
often, which I really love. I love that.
Yeah, and I think you mentioned that the cast played a game as their own characters before they started shooting,
Mhm.
Yeah.
which I thought that was really cool.
Yeah.
just to do that.
Well, and each one has a limitation, I mean, the warrior, she can't do everything on her own,
Right.
Bard can't do everything on his own. He needs her strength. She needs his know-how. So that's what I loved about it. Everybody
Yeah.
has their own strengths
Yeah.
within.
Yeah,
within
I
the,
remember you
party.
saying that in your episode when you
Yeah.
talked about it, and that is absolutely the key point that they I think they nailed probably best is they made it a D&D party. They didn't make it a movie with Chris Pine and some other people,
Right.
Yes.
or like Chris Pine and Michelle Rodriguez and a bunch of people you don't care about. Like
Yeah.
it was like 4 or 5 characters who you care about equally, who all have equal time, and one of them happens to be Chris Pine, and one of them happens to be Hugh Grant.
And I think the portal heist was probably my
Oh,
the
man.
best written thing
yeah.
I've seen in a
Yes.
long time, and the fact that it doesn't work at all made me so happy.
Yeah.
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 Yep.
I was like, that's like some Ocean's 11 level stuff there.
Yeah.
Very much so, man.
Have you ever been to Frankensons, Tim?
Frankensons?
Yeah, Frank and Son now. I guess.
Son.
I
Oh, it's
guess-
Frank and Son, but you guys said it's Frank and Sons. Or,
Well,
or,
I mean,
or
I
it's
think
Frank
on-
and
We
Son.
we totally Medellaed
Yeah.
it because we were
Yeah.
just like, it's been Frank and Sons for years. It's
Yeah.
like, no, apparently.
When
Frank
the
and
entire
Son.
time I've known you guys, you've said Frank and Sons.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
And I
I've
swear
never
in
been
my
there.
brain, I
Yeah.
see a picture of the sign with
Yeah,
the
but when we got
possible-
down there, it said Frank and Son.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But then Chad said, well, on their website, I think it says
I was
Frank
like,
and
well, I
Sons.
thought on Instagram it did have plural, Frank and Sons, but maybe I was just like forcing that S on there, and he had more than one son. But
You need consent before you force the S.
I know, that's my fault. That's my fault.
Good
But-
job, Chad.
What am I walking into? What is this conversation?
That's Jersey, baby.
Well, no, that I mean now, but that it doesn't sound as good as Frankenstein's, right? Like he's got a family, he's a family man,
Right,
you know?
right.
But now he's got Frankenstein, you know.
Yeah.
It's almost like what was that old show with Red and Sanford and Son, you know, type of that.
Yeah, no, on Instagram it says Frank and Son Collectible.
I'll
you
see,
go.
you know.
Yeah, see, you guys.
Shout out to anyone who remembers it being Frank and Sons and let us know on Instagram or
That's
something.
you guys lied to me.
Prove the Mandela effect is real.
Hashtag Frank and
I
Sons.
don't even know who Frank or his son is.
So, do you ever been to this place?
No. What is it?
So Frankenstein is a collectible show. So
It's a permanent Comic Con,
basically a permanent.
okay.
Yeah, it's a giant warehouse down in the City of Industry, which is filled with rows and rows and rows of booths of various nerdy, fun tchotchkes and stuff to buy, and
Different
there's
vendors.
different vendors. That there's a lot like specific ones. Like there's the NECA lady who just sells NECA stuff. There's a whole row that just does sports memorabilia and sports cards,
Which we kind of hustled through. We're like,
Yeah, we're like,
you want to get to the wrestling stuff,
yeah.
you gotta go down that aisle. But and like there's like Pokemon booths and and pops.
booths,
Oh my god,
tons of pops. Yeah.
Tons of Funko Pops and comic book booths and so we took a trip on Mother's Day. It was 4 of us. No,
Five of us.
five of us.
yeah.
You're right. And we all headed down there. It was Stan's first time. And
Yeah.
Stan, what did you think? Like,
So, like, they had been
How did you
talking
enjoy
about
it?
they had been talking about Frank and Son for a long time.
sounds so wrong.
It does sound
wrong.
wrong because like now I say Frank and Sons because
Yeah.
you guys so which
he'll have another kid at some
yeah
point.
eventually yeah
I'm sure.
yeah
His daughter's like, Dad, what about me?
she became a doctor
Yeah,
something unimportant
Something useful.
Something
you know?
unimportant.
She
Right,
doesn't
yeah.
want anything to do with these collectibles.
So you guys have been talking about it for a long time, and I pictured it as just a massive store full of collectibles.
Yeah.
That's what I thought it was. So, and you guys have been talking about it, and we had made plans before, and they had fell through. But so finally, a couple of us like, let's go down there. Okay, so we get down there in the parking lot, and everybody in the car had been there aside from me. So all the other 4 guys, including Chad and Watson, were like, they were pulling in. They're like, you guys are like, what's going on? Holy shit! Like they're looking around the parking lot, and it's like there's parking. And I'm like, what do you mean? And I'm thinking like it's just a store, dude. And they're like, no, you don't understand. Like this is never like this.
Yeah.
There's always 0 parking, lines around the corner. It's hard to get in there. And it's like when we come down here, we have to park like a mile away.
It is only open like 3 days of the week. It's
Yeah.
open on Saturday and Sundays and on
Wednesday.
Wednesdays.
Yeah.
And like only Wednesday afternoon, which is
Weird.
Oh, really?
But-
Oh, okay.
so you get there and usually it is like you're driving around for 20 minutes trying to find a space. You're fighting off a million anime fans that are there to pick up their stuff, and it was incredible. Like we parked like right up front. Like it was like this never happens.
Right. So we get there, and it's just. I didn't think it was. Again, I thought it was just a retail store.
Yeah.
But we drive up to it, and it looks like a Costco. It's that big, and I'm like, wow, what are we
Yeah.
getting into here? So we will finally go inside, and then I see what it is. It's just a permanent Comic Con. It's just just imagine a Comic Con with just on the floor, on the main floor with just tons of booths. That's all it is. And everybody I guess rents out their space. These vendors rent out the space.
Yeah.
Who knows how much they pay for it, but and then they just each vendor has a variety of things. Toys, pops, like we said, comics, sports memorabilia stuff. So I thought it was really cool. I was like, oh, this is such a good idea because I had never seen something like this. And I was like, well, that's a great idea. And then some of the guys went down there for specific things. Watson, you like to collect. We went down there specifically for.
Well, I was looking for the new Flash movie figures, and because they're like supposed to be out. I haven't seen one in the store.
Yeah,
and I'm sure they'll make it a store in the next month or so. But just I don't want to be patient. And I do collect action figures, but I'm trying to like pare everything down to be very specific. So I pick up the NECA Ninja Turtle movie, the 1990 movie figures.
Oh, nice.
And so I was able to pick up the last figure that I needed of that set, which is the kid Danny, who was in that movie. They made an action figure. I got myself a
the
Danny.
most obscure character.
Yeah. So I
love you,
Wait,
Danny.
Sam Rockwell didn't get a character?
I know.
That's you know
shocking.
what? It might still happen. They still have the rights to the characters, so I'm sure they're like, who can we make next? Because
There you go.
Yeah. I mean, I'm hoping it's the the chief of police. Are you trying to tell me how to do my job? You know, maybe the cameraman.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. April needs her cameraman.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I loved it. It was really awesome. And then it's just, I mean, I wasn't there for anything specifically.
Right.
You know, I did.
But you did buy some stuff.
I did end up buying
did
Captain America shield, which is something I don't have.
We pushed him to it.
Yeah,
He
you
was-
did.
We
Yeah.
were just like,
He was like,
just do it. Just do it.
Everyone
just do
has
it.
to own it.
And what
Oh, because they can
and what-
haggle.
Yeah, I was just about to say.
Yeah.
So what they told me was the great thing about this place is you can haggle, which is like, okay, that makes sense. And then it makes sense because how they explained it to me was like, if a vendor says, hey, if you tell a vendor, can I have this figure for whatever, and they say no, you can just go a couple rows down and get the
there's
same one.
plenty of
for
competition.
Yeah.
So that I was like, oh, that shit makes that makes a lot of
Right.
sense. That's why a lot of like bazaars and like markets,
Yeah, it's like
in
a
different
swap
parts of the
meet.
world are like that. And swap meets because it's like,
Yeah.
well, the guy down the street, down the aisle has it.
Yeah.
I mean,
literally,
you can't give me
yeah.
$20 off. I'll just go down here and he'll give me 20
and
bucks.
I was literally like, you can go and snap a picture of someone else's booth and go over and be like, hey, they've got it for this much.
Yeah.
Will you match it or will you go less?
Wow.
You
Yeah.
know,
So yeah, she was selling
I'm
it for
I'm a cheap asshole. That's why.
well, makes sense. So she was selling it for I believe $300, and I said, well, I'll give you. I said $150, and she's like, okay. And so
Wow,
she gave it to me.
wow,
For,
that was-
I was like, all right, sweet, you know. So
Nice.
So I got a Captain America shield. It's it's pretty nice.
Pure vibranium.
Did you post,
Pure vibranium.
did
Yeah,
you
I
post
got
it
got a
on
pretty good deal on it.
Instagram?
I did not, but I will now.
Okay.
Yeah,
dope.
yeah.
And so that's one thing I wanted, and I got to figure out how to hang it, but one step at a time.
On your
And-
back. That's where you
Yeah,
hang
that's
it,
right.
man.
Every
Yeah.
day.
And there was a guy who was selling like sideshow pieces, which are like these.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my God! There were some beautiful pieces. That's the other thing I loved about it is that the displays they had for some of the figures were amazing, and even some of the stuff they had, like I saw, I didn't know they had made a urban Judge Dredd.
Oh, yeah.
character. It looks so awesome, and I was like, and I wanted to get it, and he's like, oh, it's sold out, and I was like, okay, well, then there was a Sylvester Stallone Judge Dredd figure right next to that one. And I said, how much for that? And he's like, nah, it's sold out too. I was like, God damn it. So
Yeah.
I definitely would have got the urban one because I think it looks awesome. And then
Best
Chad,
Dredd.
we went to a booth. Chad, would you ask for like a Bebop and Rocksteady?
No, I was trying to figure out if this guy, because he had a bunch of the NECA animated version of the 80s cartoon, and I was just seeing if he had a Bebop and Rocksteady, and it was like way down in the corner and
Like piles of shit or on top of it.
and I was moving it myself, and he was like, oh, I'll get it, and I was trying to verbalize to him that I wasn't going to be purchasing it, but he
was just curious.
He didn't
I was
say-
curious.
Verbalizing meaning not saying anything until the guy moved everything out
No,
of the way.
I clearly said I was like, I don't think I'm not going to be able
That's
to get
about
it
some of
today.
these booths are so small and
Yeah.
people stack like
Tons.
10 pounds of shit in a
Yeah.
5-pound bag. It's
Yeah.
literally it's just like, oh my god.
And so when the guy finally got to it after like digging for like half an hour,
I said it before he pulled it out.
Chad was like,
Before he pulled it out, I
Chad
said
goes, I probably won't be able to pick it up
He-
today. And so I felt so bad.
no, but I was actually talking to the guy though because he also
he
takes
did, yeah.
he also takes trades and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So
Oh,
and I have some ones that I have unopened that I didn't want, and I would be like, oh, I could put that towards one I
Yeah.
want to purchase from.
Right.
Yeah,
And I was like,
he
yeah.
was very much
because they can
into-
turn a profit on those stuff.
Yeah.
you know?
And he was into like talking. He talked to Chad about like, oh, have you seen this? Check it out. And then
Yeah.
and they didn't release that series until whatever. So
Yeah.
I ended up buying a Ronin action figure for the Turtles.
Yeah.
because I had seen it in Best Buy a couple weeks ago. And there was only one left, and I was like, I'll come back for it. And I came back for it 2 days later, and it was gone. And I was like, damn it! So I ended up buying it. You know,
I mean, that's the problem with these big box stores now is like
Yeah.
you'll see one on the shelf. You know,
Right.
like
Yeah.
and it's so funny. Like I remember as a kid, like you'd walk in a toy aisle and those toy aisles would be full. You know,
Tons,
those
yeah.
every peg would be just have like 6 or 7, and they would never run out. And
Yeah.
now
yeah.
it's like if you don't buy it then and there, good luck. You
Those
know.
damn
Yeah.
scalpers.
Scalpers. And then sometimes employees will just like bag stuff and buy it for themselves.
Oh yeah. That's,
That's why, hey, any person that works at Target or Walmart and Best Buy now, because there's NECA
Yeah. Best Buy's got a
areas in
whole
their,
area,
in their
yeah.
bag. But if you want to be my friend, and then
Yeah.
I'll buy you like a chili dog at what's that? I don't know.
Pink's.
Pink. No, there's
a good place.
The starts with a W. Wine. Whatever.
Wiener Schnitzel?
Wiener Schnitzel. Yeah.
You're gonna go take the Wiener Schnitzel or Pink's. Okay.
Wait a second.
Wow.
So
You're really
for a
whining
buck.
dining
So basically
deal.
$1 hot dog.
So if you want to be Chad's friend and have diarrhea,
All right, maybe a Tommy's. Okay.
Went up to the next level.
Yeah.
Wait. Quick story. When the one time my parents visited me in LA, we went to Tommy's because it was like 2 months after I moved here. I didn't know where to go, and we were just like starving. So we stopped at a Tommy's, and I was like, I don't know if it's going to be any good. My dad, who will eat anything, and he's always like, that was good. Any meal you put in front of his face, that was good. He ate there. He's like, that was disgusting.
Really? I got.
I mean, it's not great.
I got a Tommy stories too, so they're very, they're very pungent sometimes, right?
Oh yeah.
So
I remember it to this day.
So years ago,
It's in your DNA.
yeah, I get stuck there now. Yeah.
Yep.
So years ago, I was driving for Lyft, and I used to work like late at night, and I was only doing it on the weekends. So I was making pretty good money. It's just and so I pulled over and I got a Tommy's burger. Like it was like midnight or something, and I was hungry, so I got a Tommy's burger.
That's one does.
So I'm driving around and I'm picking up customers. Whatever, the night ends, whatever, without incident. And I get an email from Lyft the next morning saying, "Oh, you've been doing a great job, but one of your customers complained about your hygiene, and apparently they feel that you might need to use some deodorant." And I was like, I was like the Tommy's burger because it does smell. It smells like armpit, you know.
Yeah.
And I was like, "Damn it, Tommy's burger! Tommy's,
Their burgers and their chili, like
And
you get the chili burger.
Yeah,
man,
that's-
yeah. You might as well be rubbing like raw ham.
it's a
on it.
cumin and
Yeah,
something
it's a lot of
else.
onion.
Yeah, onion. Yeah.
Brutal.
Just have no plans that day. As you're gonna make Tommy's.
Yeah,
Like,
don't do
I'm
it.
going home after.
Yeah,
Just-
don't work
do
with
it,
the
yeah.
public.
Yeah.
Exactly.
When you're eating that.
Yeah. Oh man, you need to work on your hygiene.
It's like, hey, did you have a Tommy's burger in here?
Yeah. What a twist.
Yeah, I mean, anything else?
Well, did you kind of briefly said about a Game Zero, like?
Oh yeah, session 0.
Yeah.
Oh,
yes.
Yeah. So one of the things that is kind of a recent invention in the gaming world. It's probably been around forever, but not many people like systemized it or organized it really well. Is this thing called Session 0, and Session 0 is where you can do. We talked about like that meta discussion of the social contract, what you bring to the game, and how to deal with problems. Well, you can solve a lot of that by talking to the people ahead of time and getting on the same page, right? So we're gonna do a really quick Session 0 right now.
Cool.
So we know what we're playing for next week.
I can't
So
wait.
we've talked a little bit about some of these. So some of these might be duplicates, so I'll try to skip past those. So nostalgia versus modern streamlined. What are you guys thinking? Like now, I kind of have a feel for what your experiences are with D&D overall, but do you have any sense of, I'd love to try the old school way, or do you want to stick with like what's the modern streamlined?
Well, I mean, the
Talking rules here,
rules.
mechanics.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, when you were talking about the BX system, I found that to be very intriguing. How that's one of your favorites. But I mean, obviously, I've only played the 5. Yeah. So I'm open to either. I'm more familiar, obviously, with the 5, but BX did sound interesting as well, but I mean,
yeah, it's BX too. Yeah, it seems like if it's your favorite, then I'd love to go with that because I want to see, doing your best with that. Yeah,
right. Let's do it.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So
dig deep.
All right. Tone. The tone of games. So D&D, we mentioned it's tactical kind of role playing game. So I think we all understand what that means and stuff. But the tone is can be something like, are we talking like, do you want survival horror where you're fighting the dark with one last torch and you don't know what monsters are around the corner, or do you want to go on an epic quest like they did in the D&D movie and you gotta like find the MacGuffin and use it to defeat the evil Lord Sauron or whatever. Like, when you think of D&D and the kind of adventure that you want to go on, is it more like a roguelike or is it more like Final Fantasy? Something like that.
Interesting.
And you don't have to agree on the same thing.
Yeah.
I can work with all things.
I'm all about the survival horror. I like that.
I kind of would like to do that too. Yeah.
I mean, that's the thing for me. It's hard to choose between the two because I do like the aspect of survival horror because it changes it up. And I'm all for some new type of thing. So
Yeah.
let's do the survival.
Add
role.
some stakes.
Yeah, add
some
some
drama.
stakes.
I like that.
I like this because I've played D&D with Chad. I've played D&D with Watson, and we played very much in the more modern sensibilities.
Yeah.
Using 5th edition, kind of a little bit more like epic, fights and tactical things. So this will be a good kind of switch up.
Yeah.
Okay. We did answer that. So that answers that too. Sorry, we're getting right.
Right,
to
we're
the end
checking
of it.
boxes here.
Also,
this is
Dan,
great.
Dan will be our fourth.
Oh, Dan's going to be the
Yeah,
fourth.
Dan's gonna be the
Excellent.
fourth, so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good,
So that's why I kind of don't want to do survival horror to scare him.
Oh, yeah.
You want to see
Make
Dan's
him
characters
uncomfortable.
die.
Yeah.
Oh, definitely. Yes.
Okay.
Creature with lots of holes in it.
Oh, God.
Oh, yes.
We don't want him to vomit.
Yeah, I don't have a mini for that. Luckily for him. Okay, so advancement. So one of the cool things about D&D, it's hard to do in a one shot, but there are ways to do it. Advancement in D&D is usually you get experience points and you level up and you get new powers, right? So and that's pretty much true of so many games, right? But D&D, what gives you experience points can be an interesting take on altering the tone of the game and how you want to play and what you want to play too.
Yeah.
So what kind of things do you think will motivate you to get experience points? Here's your choices. Money and glory. Like, do you want to be more like freelancers, sell swords, mercenaries? You're not really in it to do necessarily good deeds, but you will if the pay is right. Or you might look the other way if the pay is right too. So that's one. Skill or power increases. Just power. I just want to get power and get more and more of that. Customizing and defending a stronghold is another one, or like your community that you're a part of. So maybe your characters are all from the same village and it's being attacked by goblins. So you want to shore up the defense of this town. So you're on an adventure to get money to help the town bolster its money or something like that. And last but not least, just heroic deeds. Do you want to just be the good guys? You're in this to do the right thing. You might get money and glory. That may come with it.
Stan is shaking his head.
It's like, I don't want.
I am
I don't
a
want to
moral
hear good
gray.
I like the chaotic good Han Solo approach to everything.
the cell sword kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's my
Okay, so
I think that leads to a lot more interesting choices to be made, right?
Yeah.
Because, like you said, like you could do good deeds, but
Yeah.
not necessarily have to.
If we're in a tavern and some guy's being a dick to us and he's being jumped outside,
you might run him through with a sword.
exactly.
Yeah,
you
that's
know.
just something that could happen.
If we walk outside and he's being robbed,
It's not
So,
my
yeah,
problem.
Yeah, exactly. If he gets knocked out and they leave a couple coins behind, we're gonna take him. You
Right.
know?
Okay. All right, so we
But
got
if he's
Stan the
cool,
mercenary.
but if
Yeah,
he's cool
yeah.
with us and he brought us a round of drinks and he's getting jumped outside, we're gonna help him out. You
Okay,
know?
yeah, I like it.
Yeah.
I like it. What do you guys think, Sam?
I think it does lead to some better. Like, I feel it. Like, it's hard to just play the good guy,
Yeah.
because it does kind of like not handcuff you in any way, but it does kind of limit your options. Where like maybe I do want to turn on the group. I don't know, or like not turn on the group, but like do some, like, hey, you guys
Turn on
look
the
over there. I'm
employer,
just
maybe.
gonna, yeah.
Yeah, if there's more money to be made, right?
There you go.
Yeah.
And I mean, our three of our personalities, probably we would lean more in a sleaze bag type of way.
Really, I did not expect that.
I mean,
in this conversation.
So
I'm pretty sure my third note is that they are sleaze bags.
Yeah.
like, I mean, yeah, not all full, but but no, I think that
Welcome to Enter the Nerdom. Run by sleazebags.
hey,
That's the new refrain. New marketing angle.
but I mean, it's more human. I mean, not that we will any of us will play a human, or maybe one will, but I don't know. But I think it's more a trait where people will make those types of decisions where it's good or bad, depending on how they're being affected. So yeah, I'm down with playing morally gray characters. So
Yeah, I love it. Okay, yeah. So you just experienced your first session 0. So
Awesome.
So we could do a lot more, but I think we covered it by talking earlier of like what kind of tone D&D has
Yeah.
and stuff like that. We covered a lot of those bases, and session 0 is something that kind of solves a lot of problems. Now we all know going into this you're going to be like mercenary characters. So if you turn on your employers because you see dollar signs, like this isn't going to be a surprise to anyone, but it could be a very fun plot twist, right?
True.
And you know it could come along. And
Can we bring in characters that we already have? Can we do that?
Ooh. Yeah, I don't see why not.
Cool.
Like
I have
ideas?
one D&D character I played over Zoom with a couple people.
Yeah.
His name is Mad Mardigan. He's the greatest swordsman that's ever lived. I'm serious. That's his name. And he says it a lot. I'm the greatest swordsman that's ever lived. And he's one of those like kind of dumb oh, so there's a room and like I yell YOLO and run in like let's go, you know.
So you'll be the Leroy Jenkins.
Yeah, Leroy.
You're our tank.
Although when I was
a barbarian character or is
he's like a swordsman, like you know. So when I was playing with that group, we had a wizard with us, and so I was still thinking very tactically. And so I was like, so there was at one point there was like a ladder that went down into the ground, and it was like this tunnel. So I told the wizard, I was like, man, just shoot fireballs down there to clear it out, dude. Go. And he's like, no, I'm not gonna do that, dude. I'm like, all right, dude, like, something's gonna pop out as soon as we go down there. And sure as shit, we went down there, something popped out of us. See, you should have cleared it, right? Just like we cleared them with grenades, you should have cleared it with fireballs. Come on, dude. You know. So
a funny quick thing. The guy who actually ran my Vampire the Masquerade campaign that I mentioned earlier, he came from the military. He was, I think he was infantry, but I could be wrong. But anyway, he
dumb as shit, dumb as rock.
Well, this guy's really smart. So, I don't know if that's surprising or not, but he's really smart. But he said he would always play with other military guys. That's how he started playing. And so they would do things like that. They would go through the dungeon tactically. They got a strategy for how to deal with every door, every trap, everything. Yeah. And then he'd play with us like plebeians, people like me who have no knowledge of that kind of stuff. Yeah. And he'd be like, "You guys are always just fucking dying, getting me killed. You can't clear a room for shit." Yeah, he hated playing D&D with the normals.
Yep, that's funny.
So that's hilarious. So this will be my first time playing D&D with someone who actually knows what the fuck they're doing.
But he's got to deal with the rest of us.
Yeah.
Oh, let me kick this door open.
Yeah, it just blows up on our face.
Well, I mean that happened to
Stan's he's like doing like rolls and tucking rolls into corners, and we're just like eating chicken.
Although I did one time, we were attacking this guy, and I jumped off the top of this like a platform. And I was like, I'll do a barrel flip in the air, and I come down on my sword, but I had to roll to see, and I got a 1, and I totally fell flat on my face,
land on your sword,
and I knocked myself out. And I was like, damn it! But I was like, did it look cool? I was like, yeah, to the more that you knocked yourself out. I was like, well, okay, cool.
That's kind of the beauty of the game.
There was a game I played years ago where the group of us, we were heading to the top of the stairs where it was like a dilapidated castle, and there's this door, and we were deciding, it's like, oh, should we like listen, or should we just go right in or something? And then I forget if it was me or someone else, but we were like, let's just kick this puppy open. And then right behind the door is a dragon that just sprays us with poison, and the whole everyone's like down, and I was like, oh no. But it was hilarious.
I made bad choices.
Yeah, it was lots of fun though. I was like,
that is D&D.
Yeah.
Didn't you drink formaldehyde once?
Oh no, that was the game I played with Tim.
Yeah.
Like Dan dared you to or something?
No. I dared Adam, his bush character. I believe.
Right.
He had a halfling hidden
in a bush.
Hidden in a bush.
Yeah.
So it seemed like a bush was just following the party around, like doing all this stuff, attacking, throwing stuff out of it, but it was actually just a halfling who used the bush as a disguise, so he could sneak around.
Interesting.
And
it was a whole thing.
We were just in this one room where there was apparently some formaldehyde behind, and I was like, hey,
was like
I'll give you like some gold coin if you drink that. And then he did it, and he got damaged. Not too much or something.
Yeah, he's like surprised. He made some like critical saving throw, and so he survived it. Like I was just gonna kill him outright.
I felt bad afterhand because I didn't know
he was weakened.
Well, there was that, but like I heard after some of the other people playing were like, oh, we were kind of playing a different way than they wanted to, and I was like, oh, that's my bad.
You were in your own game party, right?
I was having fun,
Yeah, that was a fun session.
Yeah.
Well, we ended literally with was Alex's character
card.
like saying something about like the beer god because she was a cleric of the beer god.
Yeah.
The whole session she got into a few fights. She didn't do a whole heck of a lot though, and like we played this whole session for her because she came back to town. She came back to town, so we were having this whole session for her. She didn't. partly due to roles and stuff. It wasn't like her playing, but she just didn't get a lot of airtime. And then the very last thing they do, they come across like this vampire or ghoul or some horrible undead, and she's like, I can turn undead. It says so on my character sheet. It's like the only thing clerics can do at level 1 or whatever. And so she's like, I yell, in the name of the beer god, be gone with you. and her holy symbol, I think, was either a bare chest or a tankard.
I forget.
Because there was definitely a bared chest at some point in this game.
Yeah.
And so, she yells it out and she succeeds on her turning roll. It just like vaporizes the ghoul as the last thing. It's like, and the session's over.
Yeah.
All right.
Great.
Wow.
It was so good. It's so good. So the session that we're going to play, what I'll do is I'll get the character, tell me whatever you want. We can do it by email or message or whatever after. If you guys have characters too, tell me about them, and I'll come with the pre-generated characters, and you'll just slap on the name and look and feel, and I'll go off of what you tell me. So you'll have the same kind of gear or whatever. Because we're going to do this old school survival style, you're also going to have a few hirelings. So you're actually going to have multiple characters you're going to be running, and BX is simple, so it'll be super easy to do.
Awesome.
No problem. So you're going to have your little henchmen. It'll be like Monty Python, the Holy Grail, where you have your guys with the coconuts, marching behind you, carrying all your crap, and hopefully you'll get them killed before you guys do.
Hopefully so.
Yeah.
All right. I can't wait.
Yeah. So that's how we'll do it.
Sounds great.
Awesome.
All right. Well.
Tune in for the next episode, and we'll be playing a game.
Yeah. The next episode is going to be a full D&D session.
Yeah, nice. Bring your bag of dice.
Yes. Bring your bag of dice. Grab some whatever jerky or nuts you'd like to chew on, and we'll have some. Tim, did you want to plug anything at all? I don't know if you have any. Or where can they find you if they?
Yeah, so I'm pretty much off the socials nowadays because I'm an old guy and so I yell at the internet. But I do still vaguely maintain my website timbannock.com, which has a bunch of old, some of it aging now, but some of it's somewhat recent resources for role playing games because I was always a DM, and so I always wanted to inspire other people and give people tools to make gaming easier and more fun. So there is actually a ton of stuff on there for a lot of different game systems. timbannock.com. I've published a few things. You can also find them through that website that are on places like DriveThruRPG and itch.io, which I mentioned earlier. I have a few publications. Most of them are my cousin's games. I helped him edit and add art and publish them, so they're
awesome.
fully realized game systems. So
Great.
yeah, look out for those. There's some fun stuff in there.
That's dope.
All right, guys. Well, thank you for tuning in to another episode.
And thank you for Tim for coming on.
Oh yes, thank you for Tim.
Thank you.
I mean, and we'll see you again, obviously.
We're just gonna stick you in a closet for a week.
Yeah, we're just gonna.
That sounds like better than where I've been. Yeah, I won't tell you where that was. I'm just kidding.
That's an off-air conversation.
But follow us on Instagram and Twitter, and like and subscribe and rate.
Yeah, don't forget to rate and review.
Yeah, send us hate mail.
At,
gmail.com. Enter the nerdom at gmail.com. And all the jazz, whatever. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time. Enter the nerdom exit the tabletop. I got that was a bad one. No, that's all I got right now.